So I just bring it up when we have.
Morning, everybody. We'll start the meeting in just a minute here.
Morning.
Bill, I made you the co-host, so hopefully we don't have any technical issues, but if we do, all right, it's 8:31. Good morning, everyone. This is the Traffic Advisory Committee meeting for the town of Wakefield. It's February 10th, 2023. Just a reminder, this is being audio and video recorded and will be posted to the town's website and WCAT. Closed captioning is on, so if you could all mute your mics if they're not already, and keep them muted unless you're invited to speak. First will be item number 2, attendance. Steve Mayo is going to be a little bit late today, but he will be in attendance. Bill Renault, I see you here. Dan and Lois Benjamin, I see you both here. Joe Conway, I think I saw you, Joe. John Connors, I don't believe is going to be able to make it today. John, are you on? I think he had another engagement today. Myself, Lieutenant Joe Anderson, Traffic Advisory Chair. Matt Keeley.
I'm here.
All right. Also on item number 2, we have the approval of meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to accept the meeting minutes from the April 29th, 2022 meeting and the June 24th, 2022 meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Bill Renault,
Second.
second by Matt Keeley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, the meeting minutes from April 29th and June 24th have been accepted. Item number 3, Dan Benjamin, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Dan, I think he's still on mute.
For all. Lois did that in sign language, so we.
Joe, you're on mute too.
Everybody's on mute today. Item number 4 is public engagement. So if you haven't been to a traffic advisory committee meeting before, we allow the public to bring up any topics they feel that the traffic advisory committee should consider, but not anything that's on the agenda. So if it's an agenda item, we'll just ask that you hold any comments or questions for the specific agenda item. So does anybody from the public have anything for traffic advisory that's not an agenda item? If you could raise your hand. Now, one thing that we did have that Steve Mayo was going to speak on briefly, but a resident had requested that we look at the intersection of Main and Green Street and restrict the turns from Main Street heading northbound right onto Green Street. They said they've seen some close calls there just because of the tight turning radius. And also, I think another resident complained of vehicles that are heading north on Green Street, turning left onto Main Street southbound. So that's something that maybe Bill and Matt, you could maybe just take a look at outside of the meeting and see if there's anything you recommend. I can tell you that I did some brief background on it since 2016. There's been crashes in the area, but none of them have been a result of any of the turning movements on or off of Green Street. As a matter of fact, most of them were single vehicle crashes that were either on Main or Green Street that had nothing to do with a turning vehicle. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it is or isn't a good idea to look into it. So I just asked that our two engineers take a look at that offline at some point.
Will do.
Thanks, guys. All right, anything from the public? We'll do a final call here before we move through our meeting agenda. We have a pretty heavy agenda, so want to keep the meeting going if there's nothing else. Okay, item number 5 is 10 Broadway, a new proposed development there with a traffic impact assessment and site plan for us to review. It's the proposed 4-story, 124 unit multifamily housing development. We have attorney Brian McGrail. And if I got any of that wrong, Brian, feel free to correct that, and he's going to present.
Sure. Thank you, Lieutenant. Appreciate it. For the record, attorney Brian McGrail representing New Creek LLC, who is the owner of 10 Broadway. Is it possible for me to share my screen, Lieutenant?
Hold on one second. Let's see.
It worked. I think it worked.
Okay, perfect.
You're
You
in.
must be logged in there as a co-host, Brian,
Oh boy, that's dangerous. Hold on.
from previous meetings.
Okay, well, I'll proceed if I may.
Sure.
Again, for the record, I represent New Creek LLC, which is a related entity to Kimco Realty. Present with me today is John Ogren from Hayes Engineering. Hayes Engineering is our site civil engineers in this project. Scott Thornton is here, I believe somewhere on from Vanessa. He is our traffic engineer. And also one of the representatives of Kimco is Donnie Lowe, who is here on behalf of Kimco. As I mentioned, New Creek is the current owner of this property. They purchased it in 2011. And it's currently the location of the Mike's Gym site, which I think many of you are familiar with. The property is mainly, interestingly, in the industrial zoning district, with a very small portion in the business district. The property was used and housed Stop and Shop for a number of years. And my recollection from my younger days is that they closed that store when they opened the Stoneham store. And then Stop and Shop land banked the property, which sometimes supermarkets do, because to prevent competitors from going on sites that at that time might be conducive. And then, as we know, all the superstores started going in, the superstores. So that became no longer even a viable site for a supermarket. So eventually it became NHD Hardware Store. Some of you folks might remember that. And then Mike's Gym. So as I mentioned, Kimco purchased the property, and now they want to make a residential use on the site. So if I may, Mr. Chair, I'm going to, Dawn, are you here? And off mute, Don Lowe?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Don, could you maybe just give the traffic committee just a little bit of background on Kimco?
Sure. My name is Donnie Lowe. I'm from Kimco. I'm one of the redevelopment personnel. So Kimco is a national publicly traded company. Our primary function is the ownership and operation of open air shopping centers, preferably grocery owned. We do operate around the country. We have approximately over 540 properties around the US. And what I do is I look at some of the underperforming properties and try to reposition them into something better using current planning practices and smart growth policies to enhance the neighborhood and enhance the property itself. So while while our division is small, we have developed over 3,600 residential units, some office space, and some hotels. And in the next few years, we're converting some of our centers into work, play, live areas, and all around the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate that.
Sure.
So as you had mentioned at the onset, Lieutenant, Kimco is proposing to convert the property into multifamily use. Currently, the application for the before the Board of Appeals was for 124 units comprised of 76 one-bedroom, 43 two-bedroom, and 5 three-bedroom. It's important to note that, as is required by our zoning bylaw, 18% of those units will be affordable, and if it was 124 count, that would be 24 of the units would be designated as affordable units. And according to Wakefield's 2015 to 2020 housing production plan, this is the perfect location for a proposed project of this nature. In fact, Erica Kinder, our Community Economic Development Director, wrote a memo to the zoning board, and she did express concerns as to the size and the parking that was being provided. She did point out that the property is in the Junction District, and that this multifamily housing development fits within what the housing production plan is hoping to achieve. So it really does fit in within that, for lack of a better term, the railroad district with walking distance to the railroad. I think it's located just outside of Wakefield Center. It is not a desirable retail location. As Don mentioned, Kimco has a real background in that. That's what one of their divisions specializes in. You might have seen a sign up there for years trying to market it for retail type use with no success, no interest whatsoever. They have all the major retailers that they do business with and smaller retailers, and they have not been able to have any interest from a retail perspective. This gives you an idea of the site. It's kind of a unique shaped lot. It has 2.2 acres. Total square footage is 99,370 square feet, and it currently has 15,984 feet of retail. So this gives you an idea of the layout, kind of a really odd shaped pie lot, which has some frontage on Broadway and North Avenue. This is just an aerial view of the site. And what's really striking on this site is it is just all pavement. It's classic, 1960s, 1970s retail, just as much pavement and parking as possible. There's virtually no landscaping on the site as it sits today and as it was developed originally. Just some perimeter, scrub trees and weeds, which really aren't even on this property. They're kind of on the borderline with the MBTA line. So, this is one of those. This kind of gives you an idea of that line. It's the east edge of the property. I kind of say this is one of these sites that if you live in Wakefield like we do, you get used to it and you drive by it every day and you don't notice it. But people that come from out of town, if you drive by this, it's not the most attractive site right now. It certainly can be improved, and that's what Kimco is trying to do. As I mentioned, this is just outside of the downtown area, so it has an opportunity to bolster the local businesses in Wakefield Center. It will be within walking distance to the downtown. As we've mentioned, it's going to have 18% affordable component. We're hoping to create an attractive frontage on Broadway and North Ave compared to what's there today as a gateway into the downtown area. It is a transit-oriented development, walking distance to the train station. As Scott will talk about, there's actually a reduction in traffic on peak hours from what is going on there today, and which really isn't a major concern for the TAC, but there will be stormwater improvements. There's actually no stormwater treatment on the site today, and it's just straight pavement, and there'll be a significant reduction in impervious area at the site. So, as I mentioned, we talked about the units and the density, and what we originally had proposed to the zoning board was 124 units. We did not meet the parking requirements under the zoning bylaw for that size project. We were approximately 40 spaces short. At our initial hearing with the zoning board of appeals made it pretty clear to us that what we were proposing as far as density on the site was not acceptable to them. And it was also not acceptable to them that we would not meet the parking requirements under the bylaw. So what we're in the process of doing is we're in the process of making some changes to the plan, which will have a reduction in units. And we don't know the exact number yet, probably will be somewhere around 105, 106 in that area. But at the end of the day, it will also meet the parking requirements as required by our zoning bylaw. So when Scott presents today from a traffic perspective, it's a worst case scenario at 124, which we do know is going to be reduced. I also want to say we spent a lot of time with Fire Chief Sullivan and Deputy Chief Purcell on the layout of the site prior to filing. We appreciate their time on that. And I think, you know, from an access point, fire safety, that they were pretty appreciative and pretty satisfied where we stood originally. And again, the project is only going to get smaller. So with that said, I'd like to hand it over to John Ogren, and then we'll go to Scott. John can maybe go over the site plan. Is that okay, John? I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute.
Hi, John Ogren, Hayes Engineering. Brian covered a lot of ground, so I'll try not to go over too much of the same. If I might share my screen.
Bill, I think you're actually the host. Do you want to make me the co-host somehow? That
Let me, so can you see that?
yep, we can.
Okay. So this is essentially the existing conditions. Just quickly, it's about 99,000 square feet, about 2.2 acres. Fronts on Broadway, and there's a small portion that fronts on North Ave. Main Street would be on the plan south down here. There is MBTA abandoned tracks there. Crystal Lake. There's some industrial sites over in here, and then there's actually the MBTA, the live line that runs through this area here. The existing site, as you can see, is pretty much all impervious with parking and the existing building. As Brian mentioned, the majority of it is industrial. This is the zone line here. And then the small portion is in the business district. As far as access on the site, there is a driveway located on a driveway opening on Broadway Street. It's about 65 feet wide, so it's kind of a large area and not very well defined as far as entering and exiting. As far as so you know, we have filed with the Conservation Commission. There is a portion of the property that would be under their jurisdiction, 100 feet essentially from Crystal Lake, and then there is a drainage swale here that's from the outlet of Crystal Lake, and they would have jurisdiction within 100 feet of that. As far as proposed, we're obviously proposing to remove the existing building. We're proposing 2 curb cuts. One that would be-
John, your plan did not change. We're still looking at existing conditions.
Oh, it didn't? Oh,
No.
let me stop and maybe that will do it. How's that? Yeah, okay. So this is the proposed 5-story building. We're gonna have an entrance and exit curb cut towards the westerly end of the property. That will give access to, there's a parking garage on the first level that will house, this is gonna change, but essentially 83 spaces. And then there's 61 spaces surface parking, so people can get access this back parking, this side parking, and this rear parking from this entrance. So this will be two-way in and out. And then there's also kind of a loop in front of the building, which with some parking in the front. And that will be a one-way. It will come through, and then it will be exit only on this driveway opening and a right turn only.
I just
We're also-
interrupt you for a minute. Can I remind everybody to keep their mics on mute, please? If you're not, could you mute your mics? Thank you.
We are providing kind of a loading area towards the back here for people who are, moving in, moving out, collecting the trash that will be inside the building and wheeled out. Sewer and water will be connected to existing sewer and water mains out in Broadway. Drainage wise, obviously you can see there's quite a bit more green space on this than what's existing. We're reducing the impervious area on site by about 14,000 square feet. We have introduced drainage, deep zone catch basins, and a storm scepter at the end to enhance the treatment of the runoff from the site. As it is now, there's essentially no treatment of the drainage runoff. This will also, the reduced impervious area will increase the recharge into the ground. And I think that's about it. I'll turn it over to Scott.
Great. Scott, do you want me to use the slides that we use with the zoning board for you?
Yeah, sure. That's fine. Thanks, Brian.
That'd be helpful.
Yep.
There you go, Scott.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So again, for the record, Scott Thornton with Vanessa and Associates, we prepared the traffic assessment dated, I think, September 2022. And I just have a few slides to go over, and starting with this one. And I thought Brian did a real good job of explaining the site characteristics and the location in proximity to some of the activity centers for Wakefield. So, you can see on this map the 4 study area intersections, which we confirmed with the town engineer and with VHB. You can also see the Wakefield station commuter rail stop that's located about 0.4 of a mile up North Ave from the site. Also the MBTA 137 bus stops on either side of North Ave at the Main Street intersection. So the site's got pretty good transit access, and I think that's one thing that'll be promoted in marketing materials for the site. So we did traffic counts at these locations in February of 2022, including the site drive, the Mike's Gym's site drive. And fitness centers can generate a lot of traffic, and Mike's does actually. During the morning and the evening peak hour, we observed 59 trips during the morning time period total, and 74 trips during the evening time period, and on a total entering and exiting basis. And with the entering trips for Mike's Gym, about somewhere 80 to 90% of them are coming from North Ave and making the left turn into the driveway. So that's not great, and it causes a lot of friction there. As John mentioned, the existing site driveway is pretty wide at 65 feet, which is also not great for definition or for pedestrians that are trying to get through the area. But back to the trips. So we did a trip generation projection based on 124 units. And we took, we thought it was appropriate to take a 10% reduction for transit, given the site's proximity to those other transit locations. And what we found is that compared to the existing Mike's Gym site, we're expecting the development of the site to result in a decrease of 20 trips during the morning time period and 30 trips during the evening time period. So, that's and again, if the site is being downsized from the 124 unit count to, somewhere between 100 and 110 units, then these numbers, as Brian indicated, are going to be conservative. So the site would generate even less vehicle trips than is presented here. So then the next slide just kind of wraps it up. It's a reduction in traffic level from the current use, good transit situation with the reduction in traffic for the site. You have level of service at the intersections that we reviewed. Operations are either the same or improved slightly due to the reduction in traffic. And I think from a traffic perspective, it's a good story that development of the site as it stands today would be an improvement in traffic conditions. So I'll turn it back over to you, Brian. Thank you.
And I think that's also an important factor with the morning peak, because that's where the conflict would arise with the middle school.
Yeah.
So compared to Mike's Gym. So that's up in, again, just to state, architecturally, the zoning board was not pleased where we were. So we're working on that in conjunction with a reduction in the size of the project and with a mandate to meet the parking requirements under the zoning bylaw, which we will do. So that's what we have, Lieutenant.
Okay. So Brian, how short were you on parking spaces with the 124 units?
We were pretty short. I think we were 40 spaces short. John, is that about right? Approximately. Scott?
45.
45. Yeah.
Even with a parking garage, huh?
Yeah, we were short.
Okay.
Yeah. So because we can't, with the groundwater there, we don't really have an opportunity to go down. To go on,
Okay.
To go subsurface, if you will. So, in the unique, as we kind of talked about, and kind of going back to this, the unique shape of the lot really limits it. So, we made a passionate plea to the Board of Appeals because of proximity to the train station and walking that, and we met the ITE standards for parking requirements of a project of this nature. And Scott made that presentation to the zoning board, but to be honest and quite frank, they weren't buying it. So they gave us a mandate and they said, you got a non-starter here. So, reduce the size because we think it's too big to begin with. And at the same time, that's going to help you meet the parking, which we're going to require you to do.
Gotcha. Okay. No, and I agree with that. I think that's always our concern. Well, one of our concerns with development of this size is, where are people going to go if they have no place to park? So if that's already their mandate, and it sounds like you're working toward that goal as it stands right now. I don't dislike what's proposed, and I agree that it may have a trip generation that's quite different from a gym, but it's not so much what's being proposed, it's just the area itself has a lot going on. So I think no matter what you put there, there's a lot of traffic there. There's a lot of traffic when the train comes through and it backs up onto Broadway toward North Ave. You have the middle school there, which is even in the afternoon hours, early afternoon, there's a lot of traffic caused by pick up and drop off. It's actually a very it's a well-traveled school by pedestrians, which some schools aren't, but the middle school is. So they run into issues there with the crossing guards in the junction being able to effectively cross the students there. So a lot of pedestrians in the area, that's obviously it's a benefit to people that would live at this location, but there's a lot of traffic in that area. So I'd be curious, maybe Scott, where like the sight line distances come in at, especially when you exit Broadway and you're taking that right-hand turn onto North Ave. It's kind of the road geometry is kind of tough there, especially with some of the buildings that are in the way.
Yeah, certainly coming out of the site, there's about 500 feet going to the left, looking to the left. And then you're about 150 feet from the intersection with North Ave. And then so we have it is a pretty clear line of sight for the driveway traffic, and the speeds are not real high through there. So we meet those kinds of criteria. When you get out to Broadway and you're looking to the left up North Ave, I agree that there's not a lot of visibility. It's not something that we specifically looked at because it's an existing intersection. But yeah, the way North Ave kind of bends and as it's coming into this intersection, into this area, it's not a great location for sight distance. But for the traffic that's coming out on Broadway, they're restricted to right turns out only. So it's not that critical that they have hundreds and 400 or 500 feet to make that movement.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested in, and maybe the engineers will speak more on it, but I'd be interested in seeing what could be done there to improve that. I think that's, and I don't know if anything can be done there, but I'd be curious to hear their thoughts on it. So I'll turn it over to Bill, and then we'll move from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing when we had a original kind of kickoff, like kind of showing this to some of the town staff, I believe the police chief was also looking at kind of, intersection improvements for Broadway and North Ave and trying to see if there's a possibility of allowing that left-hand turn. Right now it's left-hand restricted, which would kind of help our traffic at the Nahant and Main intersection by not forcing everybody right. So that's something I think we'd like you to explore and take a look at. Just eyeballing it here, it looks like you have the sight distance, at least from a, it looks like you have mostly the sight distance. The question would be, when the signal lets go, and folks from Nahant are coming across, or whoever's coming down North Ave, what you would have for distance there. But I think that's something that we'd like to see at least explored as an opportunity.
Yeah, we did take a quick look at it, Bill, and one thing, a couple issues. One was the width there of carving out a left turn lane, or because I think there's a couple ways you could go. You could either signalize that intersection, and then you'd have to coordinate it with the Nahant intersection.
Mm-hmm.
And that would, because it'd be coordinated, I think you'd be taking and Matt can chime in as well, but I think you might be taking away timing or capacity from the Nahant and Main Street intersection. And so that's one issue. And then as far as carving out a left turn lane, or if you don't signalize the Broadway Street intersection, you'd want to have separate lanes there. And I just didn't see that there was a space to fit that in. I mean, it's something that we can go.
You have property though, Scott, right? I mean, you do have property here. So, I mean, that you could carve the lane out by kicking it into the property. I mean, that would be
I'll let, I guess I'll let Brian chime in on that, but I know we're pretty tight as it is without losing another 12 to 15 feet off of the frontage. But yeah, I mean, we can take a look. We can explore the we can explore what happens with a signal there. I don't know that this project could, could accommodate that kind of
Understood. Yeah.
benefit.
It could also just be a contribution to. I mean, that's
Yeah.
something we could do and try to dovetail that with some other town funds or get a grant or something too. I mean, if it makes sense and it's something that we can do, I mean, the police chief has asked us to at least look at it, so I think it makes sense. And if that's something that we can coordinate with the project, I think that we could partner potentially too. So.
Yeah. The other thing with that, Bill, is that I think that there's a possibility that you could encourage more traffic onto Broadway that might otherwise be on Main Street, making the left turn up North Ave. They could now come out or use Broadway to make the left turn. So I think it's kind of a slippery slope with a lot to be considered, but it's absolutely something we can look at.
Cool.
Yeah, if I could just, Bill, keep going, Bill, if you want.
No, you go ahead, Matt. Go
Okay,
for it.
just to chime in while we're talking about that issue, just going back to site distance for a second. I mean, just dropping down in Google, it seems like there's maybe an opportunity to trim some of that shrubbery that's impeding the sight line from Broadway to North, from the business on the corner. I'm not sure if that, is the way it is today. It says October 22 is the Google Street View, but that might be worth looking at. That'd be an easy one to just improve the sight line a little bit there. As far as signalizing Broadway or allowing left turns, I think it's definitely something that would be good to look at. I do agree with what Scott said, is that that could hurt the timing and phasing at North and Main. So they'd have to look at it to see if it's worth it, if the benefit is worth any detriment that it would have at Broadway and Main. One other comment I had was related to the North and Main operations. Scott, it looks like on average the queues on North heading southeast queue past Broadway. So I know you're reducing the traffic and having a slight benefit at that intersection, but just wanted to know if you looked at any optimization of that signal to try and reduce the queues on North, just because you're going to have people coming out of your site and we'll have to cross 3 lanes of traffic to get into that left turn lane to go northbound. Just wondering if there's anything that could be done to provide some additional gaps for people coming out of Broadway that want to go north.
Yeah, it's a good question, Matt. We didn't look at any optimization of the signal timings there. It's something we can look at. I thought that, given the fact that we were having a benefit by reducing the traffic at that intersection, that would obviate any need for additional modifications or improvements there. But
yeah,
it's something we can look at. Sure.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what Lieutenant said, it's a tough area. It's a busy area. I know you are reducing it and improving it slightly, but it's still going to be a tough situation. So if there's any way that you could make that move from Broadway to North and that left turn heading northbound a little bit easier, there's definitely some benefit there if it's possible.
Yep, we'll take a look.
We're happy to
Dan-
look at that. It would also help the project. So we're happy to look at that.
All right, Dan and Lois, do you have anything? Joe Conway?
No,
I also, just to read into the record, I did receive an email from a resident of Green Street. His name is Vincent DeCecca, I believe is his last name. And his email reads, I know it's very early in the process, but when reviewing the intersection North Ave and Broadway, the obstruction that the Felitti sign presents to drivers turning right onto North Ave needs to be considered. He doesn't think the sign should have ever been there in the first place. I think it's one of a few obstructions there. Like Matt pointed out, there's some shrubbery there. There's a building there too, so it's not just a sign, it's the road geometry. So it's just I think overall that intersection there, and then the overall flow of the main intersection of Main, Nahant, and North Ave needs to be looked at. So whether it's you know, a signal, whether it's using some of the property at 10 Broadway to create another lane. I'd like to see just a little bit more on that. And then obviously the parking counts, I'd be curious to see where those come in at with any reductions that the developer considers.
Yeah, Lieutenant, we can take a look at those items. And I'm doing the same thing, Matt, that just pulling it up on a street view. I'd be curious to see where the right of way line is for the shrubbery and the sign, because, or in relation to the shrubbery and the signs, because the sign sure looks like it's got to be in, you know, private property. So, you know, but we'll take a look to see where where the public property ends and the private property starts up.
Is there any sidewalks between North Avenue and Broadway where the Felitti building is? Any sidewalk at all?
On the north side of Broadway, or I'm sorry, on the north side of North Ave, but not in front of the Felitti building.
All right, any other comments or questions from members of TAC?
If I may just make one comment, and this is going back, I know, years ago, there used to be access to, I think it's a paper street that's called Railroad Avenue, a railroad street. And I think it runs in back, if you notice by the railroad tracks, Crystal Lake, the three white kind of triangular shaped buildings, they used to be old Quonset huts and they rebuilt them. But is there a roadway that goes beside them that's called Railroad Street? And I think they have it through the.
No, there's a road that stops at that right of way line. We explored it during the train horn situation back in the day, to see if we could have that as an access point. And the MBTA said basically it's a non-starter to have a crossing there, so that's not happening. So there's one because the street comes off of Main Street. There's like that.
Yeah, and it turns around in back of the building like.
Yeah, it doesn't route behind those other buildings though. Yeah, it never did. And or maybe it did at one point, but ultimately there's no access now. And the MBTA has told us that's not going to happen.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to open it up to members of the public. If anybody has any comments from the public, if you could raise your hand, state your name, and we'll give you 3 minutes to present. So anything on 10 Broadway from members of the public? Brian, hearing nothing from the public, I'll leave it to you to close out.
Yeah, so we're happy to take a look at the issues raised by the TAC. If it's okay with you, Lieutenant, we can, if we could work through Bill Renault on that, the town engineering department, because he has access to Matt Keeley. And Bill, if that's okay, because what we find, we'll run through you, because you're the one that's going to vet it with Matt anyways.
Sounds good.
Okay.
That works.
And hopefully get some answers on this stuff and see what we can do.
Okay.
Brian, what's your time frame on the project?
No,
Say you get approved, you know, in the next, say, 2 or 3 months.
Donnie, can you address that?
Sure. If we were to get approved in 2-3 months, I believe we could be under construction within a year or so.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So we have that agreement for the you know, for the access agreement to get into the back of those properties next to you. So, you know, we're planning to do our Broadway work to remove the islands that are there and install new signals. And I'm probably about a year out myself for that work. So I just want to make sure that they don't lose their access before I get my work done, because we're kind of landlocking them. All right. So just we're going to need to coordinate that. So that might be a condition with the VBA, Brian, but we'll work that through you as we get through the process. Just want to give that as a heads up so we don't forget about it.
And that would just be the start of our construction. It would probably take 18 months to build, so we could leave things open.
Yeah, right. But exactly, just to keep in mind that that's something that we just got to coordinate. I don't see it being a long project. Honestly, it's going to be something quick as soon as we get the go ahead from the T. So
Okay.
Brian, just one other thing I forgot to ask, was there any retail space or anything like that involved? I saw something
No.
from Kimco that it might have just been a presentation of some other work they've done, so I didn't remember.
Yeah, that's
hearing.
just more their background.
Okay.
You know, so, you know, like I said, they originally looked at this as commercial, but there's no fit here.
Okay,
It was probably zoned industrial for a reason back in the day.
all right, fair enough. All right, so we're going to close out item number 5 and move on to item number 6. Unless Brian, you have anything else?
No.
All right, thank you very much. Item number 6 is 314, 330, 336 Salem Street. New development, assessment and site plan review for a proposed 3-story, 19-unit apartment building and 1 new single-family home. So kind of a different one. I'll let Brian McGrail present on that.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Again, for the record, Attorney Brian McGrail, representing Granite's Family Trust LLC, who is under agreement to purchase the properties at 314, 330, and 336 Salem Street. With me today is, again, John Ogren from Hayes Engineering, our site civil, and Bill Bergeron, also from Hayes Engineering, who's our traffic consultant on this. And on behalf of Granite's, Bill Mandel and Jim Cook are here. They're the ownership entity of Granite's. It's almost overwhelming to kind of explain the mix of existing uses occurring on the combined properties here. It's really a tangled web. There could be a textbook in poor planning, and this proposal is an opportunity to clean things up at this intersection at Salem Street and Lowell Street. I'm going to kind of do my best to lay out the existing conditions and what's happening there today, and then we can get into what we're proposing. This is the tangled web. So these are the combined properties of 330 to 336 Salem Street. And to kind of lay out what is going on here, you can kind of see the yellow is the existing property lines. So this is 330, right? I'm sorry, 314 right here. And then see this line here, it goes down and cuts over, cuts back, and cuts back this way. That's 330 and 330 rear. So 330, 330 rear. And then the back lot, which is a beautiful single family home, its frontage is here on Salem, and it goes back, and it's kind of this big lot. So it's all kind of related parties that have owned this over the years. As I mentioned, it's kind of a tangled web, and what's happening there today for use is in this building at 314. It's a 2-family house. It's a two-family dwelling. Then at 330 up front here, you have 2 commercial units in this building and also 2 residential units that's occurring here. Then 330 rear, this big building in the back, you have 4 residential units and 2 large garage storage units. And at 336, as I mentioned, you've got 1 residential unit. So you have a total combined taking place on this entire site of 9 residential units and 2 commercial units, and then 2 garage/storage units. What you're going to see, what we're proposing here is 1 building. We're trying to tidy this up with 19 residential units, then a single family home in the back that will replace this 4-unit and storage facility building. That will be a single family. And then in the back, we want to maintain this single family. So excluding the garage and storage units, there's currently 11 units on the property, 9 residential, 2 commercial. And that doesn't include what I mentioned, this garage and storage stuff that's going on. And the proposal will only have 21 units. We're proposing, you'll see a 19-unit building up here, nice and tidy, and then 2 single-family homes in the back. We've gone to the planning board. They've signed an approval not required plan because we have to change some property lines. And what we're going to be doing here or proposing to do is a common driveway. Because right now, I'm gonna kind of switch maps if I can. Show you what's actually happening on the ground. So this is 314 Salem. And it's a two-family house. It's got its own drive, it's got its own curb cut on Salem Street. And then as you come around, now you're going to be familiar, on the opposite side, you've got the Prime gas station. This is the 330 property. And you can see this has two curb cuts. So now you got 1, 2, and this is a wide one. Then you got another curb cut, and this curb cut is kind of a common driveway that serves the 4-family building and the storage stuff in the back, and also the single-family house way in the back. So you really have, 3 units, and you got a bunch of different stuff going off the site. Some of the neighbors across the street have attended the zoning board and talked about what's going on here and how there's they're very encouraged about the opportunity to improve it and organize the site in more of a tidy fashion. It's this is, as I've mentioned, it kind of is an opportunity to detangle this web. The property's partially up front is in the business district, and the back it's in the single resident zoning district, hence the two single family houses out back. It's a very challenging intersection, as I'm sure the traffic advisory committee is familiar with. Historically, there's been a number of zoning complaints going back to Jack Roberto's day as building inspector. He was out here quite a bit, and because of all of the stuff going on here is he determined was legal non-conforming. There's really nothing that can make it not happen, but there's certainly something that we're talking about now that can actually improve it. As I've mentioned, when you look at all of the residential units there today, 9 of them, none of them are categorized as affordable units. Our proposal out of the units that we're proposing, 18%, or 3 of those 21 will be affordable and go to our housing inventory. Basically where we stand, we're currently before the zoning board. Our first run at the design of the building up front, they did not like it at all. And so we're back before them, and we're kind of trying to work that issue out. The topography of the site lends to the fact that it's going to be, I think, kind of a fairly low building from the front. I'm going to show you, if I may, kind of where we stand design wise on the building. Something we're aiming for. This is not at all final, but we're aiming for something like this, that this would be like a front elevation. So this is a multi-family building, but to give it a townhouse feel on the front, with kind of a wall, and when you look at this, it's really going to be like a 2.5-story building from the front to kind of fit into that area. But higher in the back where we really wouldn't impact people, with parking underneath, which John will get into. And so will Bill, as far as laying this out. So with that said, I hope that kind of sets the table. I'm going to hand it over to John. So I kind of showed you the existing conditions, and now John can show you what we're proposing, and we can talk about the traffic impacts and benefits. John, all yours. Yeah, unmute, John.
John Ogren, Hayes Engineering. I think Brian did a good job of explaining a very confusing existing condition site. So I think I'll just pretty much jump right into what we're proposing. as Brian said, we're reconfiguring some of the property lines to create 3 lots. There's existing 3 lots, but we're reconfiguring those, and that's in the yellow here. This front lot will contain a 4-story, 19-unit multi-residence building. It will have parking on the first level, and it also will have additionally surface parking behind the building. So there's 24 in the parking garage, and there's 9 spaces outside for a total of 33 parking spaces. The zoning requirement of 1.5 spaces per unit for 2-bedroom or less. It would be required to have 29 spaces. So we actually have some additional spaces over what's required. Again, it's probably go over in the front, and Bill Bergeron from our office will go into this a little further, but there's an existing curb cut here, an existing curb cut here, and then the existing driveway to the existing 2-family here. We're essentially utilizing just this curb cut here, and these 2 curb cuts will be eliminated, and that will provide, this driveway provides access to that parking garage and to the parking behind the multifamily, and also provide driveway access to the new proposed single-family residence and the existing single-family residence here. We did look at this in terms of, these are at a minimum 20 feet wide for a driveway. In terms of access for say a fire engine, they can pull in here. We did some analysis, and they can pull up here and actually turn this around and come out straight, and they don't have to back out onto Salem Street. Again, sewer and water, we'll be tying into existing Salem Street mains, and drainage wise, we're reducing quite a bit. There is quite a bit of existing impervious. We're reducing the impervious area of the site by about 13,000 square feet, along with we've introduced some roof infiltration for the multifamily building, and we've also introduced basically a rain garden treatment in the back behind the existing single family. I should point out, just to clarify too, as far as zoning, the front of the lot is business, basically 100 feet from the sideline of Salem Street is business zone, and the remainder of the property in the back is single residence. I'll turn it over to Bill, and he can talk a little bit.
John, just keep this up. So just this single family house in the middle, John, can you point to it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the zoning board wants us, we're working on pushing that over to the side in the green area behind it as far back as we can. So they didn't like the location of it. So just wanted to point that out. So sorry about that. Bill, go ahead.
My name is Bill Bergeron. I'm with the firm of Hayes Engineering, been here for a long time. And when we first took a look at this, obviously, because we have the 3 intersections for basically this one property, the 3 driveways for this one property, and the fact that the busiest portion of this was right at the apex of the Salem Street and Lowell Street intersection, what we were trying to do was uncomplicate the turning movements that happen at the intersection. And under the existing conditions, the current site generates about 357 vehicle trips per day. The projected amount of traffic that we're talking about when we are finished with this is 54. So it's the projected traffic is about 15% of what the existing traffic is. And it will all be located on the driveway that's the extreme westerly portion of the driveway. And I thought that based on the existing site conditions and the fact that we were trying to get the access point away from the intersection of Salem Street and Lowell Street, that this would be the better place to actually access the site from. The vehicle speeds, we did a vehicle speed check on both directions. It was basically 30 miles an hour, which is the posted speed limit for the westbound traffic, and about 29 miles per hour for the eastbound traffic. Since we did the traffic study, we are aware of the town's plans to upgrade the intersection of Lowell Street and Salem Street. And the modifications that are proposed are going to make Lowell Street be a true T intersection with Salem Street. And it will remove the actual turning movement that allows Salem Street traffic to just basically go straight down Lowell Street. The modified intersection will require basically the vehicles going westbound on Salem Street onto Lowell Street to actually almost stop and do a 90-degree turn to go onto Lowell Street. The left turns out of Lowell Street onto Salem Street still will be currently the way they currently are with that island configuration. But the relocated T intersection will definitely have an impact on we believe the vehicle speeds. After we found out about the intersection, I ended up going out there and just kind of monitoring to see kind of what the split was between the vehicles that were using Lowell Street and the vehicles that were using Salem Street. And it basically is about 32% of the vehicles are going and using Lowell Street, and maybe 68% are using the Salem Street both ways. So there's definitely going to be for the westbound vehicles on Salem Street and basically the eastbound vehicles on Salem Street, because of the turning movements that are going to be generated by the reconfigured intersection. I think that the vehicle speeds will definitely slow down. In addition to that, I understand that the proposed improvements will also include the construction of a new crosswalk that will be westerly of our site driveway, and in conjunction with the gas station across the street. I was curious of the location of the crosswalk and why it wouldn't be better up at the actual intersection, since we are closing off that driveway curb cut permit, and maybe because under the existing conditions, it wouldn't make sense to do that, but under the proposed conditions, when we close that driveway off, that would be an opportune location for that. Just something before the design actually goes to construction that may want to consider. But irregardless, the addition of the crosswalk westerly of our site driveway and the reconfiguration of the intersection, we believe will have an actual beneficial impact on our site. Now, the existing conditions on the site driveway, we do have sufficient site distances for the eastbound traffic, both in terms of stopping site distance and intersection site distance. For the westbound traffic, for vehicles that would be making a left turn out of our site, there is sufficient stopping site distance in excess of what's required for the 85th percentile vehicle speeds. We have 225 feet proposed, or that will be available. 200 feet is what would be required. The actual intersection site distance, which is simply a measure of not relative to the actual safety of the intersection. If you have a stopping site distance that exceeds the required, then you basically have a safe intersection. The advantage of the intersection site distance, which is basically 335 feet, is that for the vehicles that would be moving westbound on Salem Street, they wouldn't have to slow down more than basically a certain amount. So it's just more a convenience factor on having vehicles on the actual amount of traffic. And like I indicated, basically, we're gonna have 15% of the traffic coming from this site than currently exists. So we don't think that, based on where the location is, the modifications going into the intersection, and the fact of the lower traffic generation, we believe that this is probably the better alternative for the site. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Bill, did you want to talk a little bit about the proposal first?
Yeah, no, I think he hit it on the head. I mean, our original reason why we located the sidewalk, the crosswalk where it was, is because of the current use. So, we definitely are planning to move. We've already actually redesigned it to dovetail with this. So, our plan would be to move the crosswalk to the, essentially to the front of the building now. And I think what we would like to do ideally is maybe, because the only thing we've really done is we have the ramps that were put in. I think we would look to remove those, and we have some foundations for rapid flashing beacons, but those are all paid for by grant money. So I think all I'd look for from this project would be just to cover the cost to relocate it. So the removal of the crosswalk and those foundations that are there for the RFPs, we can reuse them. It's just the cost of that. So somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 15,000 or something like that. So that's all we'd be looking for from my perspective. But yeah, I think not having the intersection site distance is an issue. I think restricting to a right turn would be appropriate here, because you could go right down Lowell and still be able to get around town. I think that solves that problem pretty easily. Aside from that, those would be my only two comments.
No, I agree. I think what's proposed cleans up the site there. I think, like Hayes spoke about, it uncomplicates all the various turning movements there. It makes it safer for pedestrians walking down Salem Street to not have so many curb cuts to contend with, and vehicles entering and exiting the existing site. I think having that single curb cut and access driveway on the western side of Salem Street, away from the intersection, is a good idea. I think that's a smart move on that end. And then what Bill's designed with engineering for the future of Lowell Street and Salem Street there is going to calm traffic naturally anyway. It's just kind of been in queue for a little bit because of National Grid work and things that have been going on there. So this all fits together nice. I like it overall. It's good. I think it's going to really improve that area in many ways.
Lieutenant?
Yes, Sam.
Yeah, I think we all know that curve there on that road, and like Brian was saying, it's a mishmash in there. And if I can remember right, just talking about that entrance point as it is now, or driveway, I don't know what you call it. But I remember a few years back, they had a multi-alarm fire inside at one of those buildings, and it was a stubborn blaze, but the fire department couldn't get back there, and they actually had to call for, more manual help to get back there. And this will clean that all up. And as long as the fire department's approving it, it's going to be great. But compared to what it was a mishmash, like Brian said.
Yeah, from a traffic perspective, this is much nicer. Matt.
Thanks, Lieutenant. Just a couple questions. So I would like to see the intersection site distance. I'm not one that agrees with stopping site distance being adequate for safe operation. So I'd like to see the actual intersection site distance measurements for the new driveway. My other issues are relatively minor, but just things that I would like to see fixed with the trip generation, just so I can see what the actual numbers are going to be. The calculations were based on the 10th edition of the trip generation manual. That should be updated to the 11th edition. And just the methodology in terms of the independent variable being the number of residents instead of the number of units definitely makes a difference. So I think the trip generation is a little bit higher than what's in the memo. I don't think it's going to change the conclusions, but just in terms of us sort of signing off on this, I do want to see the updated numbers for the 11th edition, and changing that independent variable to units instead of residents. I think it's understated in the memo because it was basically saying one resident per unit, which isn't going to be the case. And I think it's just more accurate to base those calculations on the number of units.
All right, anybody else from TAC? All right, I'll turn it over to public comment. If you have any comments on this proposed development, if you could raise your hand and state your name. I don't see anybody. If there is, if you could just unmute and state your name. All right, last call for public comment on item number 6.
Sorry, Joe, one more question.
Yep.
How many stories was the building again? The 19 units?
Because of the topography, it's going to look like a 2.5 to 3-story building in the front, as I showed it, but then it falls off in the back, so it will be classified as a 5-story in the back.
5-story?
Yeah, but it's all, the architectural aspect of this is very early in the process with the zoning board. As I said, the first building that we presented to them, they did not like it at all. And it was more of like a multi-family looking dwelling, and they did not think it fit into the area. So they sent us back to kind of square one from the drawing board. Footprint's not going to change. It can't change because of the zoning district lines, but the way the building is going to look is still kind of in the works with the Board of Appeals.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Brian, it's actually a 4-story.
Oh, 4 in the back, John?
Yeah, it's
Thank
like
you.
3.5 in the front and 4 in the back.
Thank you.
All right, Brian, anything else for us before we close out? Item
No,
numbers?
again, with this one, if it's okay with you, we'll work with Bill and Matt and make sure we get Matt the information that he wants.
Sure, that works.
Great.
All right, thank you very much. Item number 7, 369 to 371 Main Street, traffic impact assessment and site plan review for proposed restoration of an existing building and development of a new 3-story multifamily housing development. A total of 20 proposed residential units between both buildings. And we have Attorney Brian McGrail.
Thank you, Lieutenant. I'm just going to bring something up on the screen if I may.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience. For the record, Attorney Brian McGrail here on behalf of Kingman Block LLC, owners of property at 369, 371 Main Street, which is kind of highlighted here in green and in orange. It's a combined property. It goes by the address of 369, 371. It's the old Santander Bank building in the lot in the back with the drive-through, which is the combined properties here, to familiarize you with it. Rick Salvo is here with me. He's from Engineering Alliance. He's a site civil engineer on this project, and Scott Thornton is here also. As I've mentioned, the owner is Kingman Block LLC. The principal of that is a gentleman by the name of Bill Tebow, who purchased the property. So Kingman Block is the actual owner of the property. They don't have it under agreement. I think when we look at the streetscape, I think the board is pretty familiar with this building. So there's a lot in the back, the drive-through, in the building itself. There's a long history of this building. Many people consider this building the centerpiece of our downtown. It was once Wakefield Trust Company, became Shawmut, became Fleet, became Santander, and it always had existing offices that were rented out on the second floor or used for banking purposes. Time has passed this building by for the use as a bank. Now the new banking concepts, you can see what Santander built down the street or where they're occupied down the street. That's kind of the new model for branches, because this is a branch. It's not the main home branch of a bank. And so banks really don't go into branches or open branches in buildings of this nature anymore. So it was being sold by the owner, and it was on the market for quite some time with no buyers. When properties are like this on the market, I get a lot of phone calls because of the nature of my business from interested buyers on what they could do. And I can tell you that many of the potential buyers of this building were interested in the option of raising the building and just using the 2 lots, which I thought really was kind of a non-starter, but that was a lot of potential buyers. Bill Tebow fortunately went in a different direction. He fell in love with the building, and he saw the opportunity to revitalize it and put it into a mixed use in the downtown area, and thought it would be a great spot for a restaurant use with offices above in the original bank building, and then a new 20-unit residential building in the back with parking underneath, because to do the rehab on this building financially, just having a restaurant in it doesn't support it. The residential component would help support that and make it financially feasible. So Bill endeavored on that, and we put plans together. And the original filing on this was for a 4-story building in the back in the parking lot area with parking underneath, and 20 units in that building. And then the bank building would have on the first floor a restaurant, and then about 10,000 square feet of offices up above. So the mixed use would be restaurant, offices in the old building, and then residential in the 4-story building in the back. And when we went to the zoning board on this originally as part of our filing, they did not support the 4 stories in the back. They didn't like the massing because it was taller than the original bank building. And they also did not support the 10,000 square feet of office space because of parking concerns. Because it would have put us pretty significantly short of parking, notwithstanding that we were in the downtown area and really close to the train station. That was made pretty clear to us that was not going to be acceptable. So through a working process with the zoning board, this project has now morphed into a 3-story building in the back, which pretty much matches the height of the existing building, with a connector between the 2 buildings up above. So you can go between them. The 3-story building in the back will have parking on the first level. It will only have 15 units instead of the original 20 that were proposed back there. And the other 5 units, to get a total of 20, have now been moved in to the 3rd story of the existing bank building. So it's really going to be kind of a neat project. That old existing bank building will have a restaurant on the lower level and partially on the 2nd floor. And the remainder of the 2nd floor is vacant because it's cathedral ceiling. So Bill wants to keep that feature and try to preserve as much history as he can on the inside of the building. And the 3rd level of the building will be 5 units on the old building. Zoning board seems okay with the parking because the restaurant, we're proposing that we won't have parking for the restaurant, which is pretty common downtown. The type of restaurant that is going to open in a building like this is going to really probably not be open, certainly not in the morning. And certainly, it's really going to be a dinner type and a weekend type restaurant, high end, to go into a building like this. We are proposing 28 parking spaces. We're 2 short from a residential standpoint. For 20 units, we would need 30. Although we don't have a commitment from the zoning board on anything yet, they seem amenable to the fact that we would be 2 parking spaces short, considering the fact that we're right in the downtown area and virtually a baseball throw from the train station. So With that said, I'm going to share a different screen, if I may, to give you kind of an architectural feel how this is going to work. This is down below on the left. This is the site. Kind of in red, and this gives you an idea how the buildings match. And the parking will be under, and there'll still be a flow through to Albion Street through the building. And there's going to be a connector. So these are this kind of, Rick will get into the site plan a little bit detail. So that you can see the connector up high going between the two buildings. So these folks that are going to be in the bank building, their units will be able to go across and go down and access the parking area. Kind of a neat layout. There's some right-of-way issues here and easement issues, and I've spoken with the town engineer, Bill Renault. He wants to look at that with me and town council to kind of vet the rights, because the town owns a building on Albion Street, which is a cultural exchange. And there's some desires to have a cooperative working relationship on some access stuff there. So we're aware of that, and we're going to work with Bill on that, talk about that, and see what those rights show to be. So this is the second floor where units will be. And again, the restaurant space will be part of the second floor. And then the lower restaurant will be open above to the cathedral ceiling, preserving a lot of the historic components of the bank inside. And then the third floor will have units, and they'll connect to the units in the bank building. I'm going to kind of go right to, this is kind of a shot at the elevation. So this is kind of the version that the zoning board has they went through a lot of different versions. As I mentioned, this was originally proposed to be 4 stories. It was going to be higher than the bank building, and they required us to knock it down. They talked about different materials, how some of this building matches what's going on with the bank building and the brick component, but that's really not jurisdictional for you, but it has been through a long vetting process with them from an architectural standpoint. With that said, I'm going to kind of hand it over to Rick. Rick, are you there? Rick, can you bring up your site plan? Is that okay?
Yeah, I can. No problem.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Lieutenant. For the record, Rick Sal with Engineering Alliance. Brian, I think, once again, gave a great overview, but just to kind of supplement it a little bit more, is an aerial view, the bank building, the parking lot, the ATM or drive-through structure over here, Chestnut Street, Albion Street, obviously, which is one way, Main Street in the front. As Brian said, the proposal here is to construct, it's actually a 14 unit building with a footprint of about 6,000 square feet. One-way access from Chestnut Street through to Albion to access this parking field underneath the building over here. And then there'll be a 2-way access over here to access this parking field. As Brian mentioned, there's a total of 28 spaces. 18 of those are standard spaces, 8 of them are compact, and then the 2 accessible spaces. We worked with Wakefield Light to relocate. There's a transformer back in here that's very difficult for them to get to. So we're going to put it out here, and it's going to be a shared transformer for all these buildings in the area. Trash pickup will be back in this area over here. As you can see, the building takes up the majority of the lot. The lot right now is all completely impervious. There is some green space that's proposed along the fringe, along the front, and along these areas over here. But by and large, it's impervious today, and it will continue to be impervious. As far as stormwater and utility connections we made out to the respective mains in Chestnut Street. As far as stormwater goes, we'll be infiltrating the roof of the building, which will result in a net decrease. The rate of stormwater runoff. The floor drains underneath the building will drain through a gas trap into the sewer. And then since we have such a small amount of pavement that sticks out around the edges of the building, we're proposing a pervious pavement solution. The drainage results in a significant net decrease just by infiltrating the roof, but trying to do kind of the green responsible thing here with the pervious pavement in these areas over here, just to kind of result in a net decrease of zero stormwater leaving the site. Just to see how it sort of fits in with the neighborhood here. As Brian mentioned, this is the upper level connector that would connect above, one-way circulation through to Albion Street, full access driveway here. I think with that, I'll turn it over to Scott to run through the traffic impacts.
Yeah, and Rick, thanks for correcting me, because it went from 15 in the back to 5 in the front in the old
Yeah.
building. It's actually going to be 6 now in the old building and 14 in the new building.
That's right. I think 4 of those are 1-bedrooms and the balance are 2 bedrooms.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. So, Scott.
Okay, thanks, Rick and Brian. Brian, do you want me to share my screen? Oh, that would work, right?
Yep.
Okay. A second. Okay, can you see that?
Yep.
Perfect. All right, so thanks, Scott Thornton with Vanessa and Associates. And again, Brian and Rick did a great job walking through the site. So this site location map shows the site in proximity or in relation to the study area intersections that we reviewed, and also in proximity to transit facilities. You can see the train station is about a quarter mile to the west down Albion Street. The 137 bus again travels on Main Street, and it stops in this block between Lincoln and Water Street, about 2 blocks away. We discussed the study area with the town engineer and with VHB, and included these locations for study, including the 5 intersections around the periphery of the site, including the existing driveways for the bank, going down obviously Main Street through Water and West Water, Armory Street, and down to the North Ave intersection, and then back up to Albion Street. We did traffic counts at a number of these locations in June of last year, and then we supplemented those counts with other data that we had for some of these locations. In terms of the trip generation, we did counts of the existing site, and obviously with the ATM and the other functions that are using the driveways, we counted a fair amount of site traffic there, with 25 trips in the morning time period and 42 trips in the evening time period. For the project consisting of the residential units and the restaurant, we use the ITE data unadjusted for the residences, but then based on the proximity of other, and the general activity, the pedestrian activity in the area, as well as proximity to other residential and other employment uses, we anticipated a 50% reduction in the ITE traffic generation for restaurant. This is similar to a pass-by rate, which we didn't use. Pass-by for a restaurant use like this could be in the 40 to 45% range. But again, we thought that that it was appropriate to use the 50% reduction, assuming half of the trips to the restaurant would occur through pedestrian activity. And again, you can see that we're not expecting the restaurant to be open in the morning, so there's really just a traffic component due to the residential use in the morning, whereas in the evening the restaurant would be open, and the residences will be generating traffic. But still, in terms of net traffic increases, we're looking at a pretty small increase, about 4 trips in the morning and about 3 trips in the evening. We also looked at parking, and as Brian had indicated, we're looking at about 28 spaces for the residential, and we anticipate that the restaurant parking demand can be met on street. We looked at the ITE parking demand data, showed that in general, the residential uses would be
What's up, man?
to have a demand of about 13
Hold on,
spaces.
hold on 1 second.
Everybody could mute their mics, please.
And then the restaurant demand would be expected to have a demand about 26 spaces, which is close to the zoning requirement of 24. So we looked at the availability of on-street parking in the area, and just in the immediate vicinity of Chestnut Street, Main Street, and Albion Street, there's about 60 spaces. It's a mix of accessible, just a couple 15-minute spaces, and the majority of them are 2-hour spaces that could be utilized by the restaurant patrons. And then if we were to expand that review a little further, this is from the parking map that's provided by the town, and there's a fair amount of parking spaces within a quarter mile of the site, a total of about 98 spaces that exist. And so, and these are quarter mile walking distances, so not as the crow flies, but all within a quarter mile walking distance of the site. So there's substantial on-street parking capacity in the area. So just to summarize, slight increase in trip generation, no change in level of service, close proximity to transit use, and again, we think that we can accommodate demand of 26 spaces within the 158 spaces that exist on street within a quarter mile distance of the site. That's it for traffic. I'll turn it back over to you, Brian.
That's what we have, Lieutenant. Again, I think another great opportunity to reuse a site in a good way and preserve a site at the same time.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I like the site. I like, or at least the proposed use. I think it's a unique way to use what's existing, and I like it. I'm not really concerned about the traffic end with a development like this, but parking would be my only kind of like asterisk. And I'd like to see. I'm less concerned with the restaurant space. More concerned with the parking for the residential side of it. So would it be apartments or condos or with deeded spaces? How would this work?
There's no whether he's gonna. It's probably gonna be a rental building. That's my guess. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
not 100% sure. That's where he's leaning pretty
Okay.
strong.
Yeah, I know the site kind of limits you. I would like to see the parking met, but I also understand that you're very close, and the site kind of limits what you can do there to get creative for squeezing in a couple more spaces. I would say that if approved, any memo would have to include the understanding that any residential permits would not be allowed for streets like Chestnut Street. That's very typical of what we do in town for developments like this. They're not allowed to purchase any available on-street residential permits, and with the other understanding that the restaurant employees would be able to park for more than the allotted 2 hours in a merchant space, but that space is, it's a little bit of a walking distance away. It's not that it's inaccessible, but they'd have to pay for a merchant pass to be there for the entire day if they were coming in within that restricted time period. And there's a lot for merchants that was kind of redone over by Omelet headquarters on Water Street. So it's very accessible to the site, but I just want to make sure that they understand that that would be available to them. Outside of that, I have nothing else. Bill?
Yeah, sure. No, I think it looks great, guys. Just my big question was just on the sidewalks around the property. I mean, I know Albion Street's been reconstructed, so they're in good shape. Is there a plan for the stuff on Chestnut? Are you guys looking at that? Are they planning to?
I think right now our plan was to reconstruct the sidewalks along our frontage.
That would be
You know, because
that would be my preference. So
yeah.
they're pretty beat up. There's a bunch of tripping hazards. If you're trying to, if we're saying that we don't have the parking and we're trying to have folks walk there from the downtown and all these other spaces, I want to just make sure that they can safely.
No, and it's our front door, right? So we want it to match the building. So
Yeah. So I think ideally what we'd be looking for would be on the Chestnut Street approach, because we have the downtown planned for a larger redevelopment. Granted, that's going to be in a few years. I'd hate to have you guys invest in something that we're going to rip up. So.
Do you not want us to do that work? Would you rather us make a contribution towards it, Bill?
Well, the Chestnut piece, I'd rather you guys do it. Ideally,
Okay.
I think that would be preferred. Yeah, because you're going to be all, doing all your work. You're going to have everybody there. It makes sense for you guys just to take care of it.
Okay.
So we'd just like you to, if you could, Rick, just include in your plan a grading plan that demonstrates it's going to be ADA compliant and all that stuff. We have templates and samples of how we do it. I can give that to you if you'd like. That's all I have, guys.
All right, Matt.
Yeah, just a couple questions on trip gen and parking. What is the actual size of the restaurant? I'm not sure I understand the whole 2-level thing and what the actual square footage is of the restaurant.
Rick, can you unmute, Rick?
sorry about that. I'm trying to bounce back and forth between plans here. It's 6,357 square feet.
And that's only in the 80 seats? It just sounded kind of big for an 80-seat restaurant.
I don't think the restaurant's been laid out and designed yet. I mean, I think that's just what we kind of threw in for a placeholder, was probably bigger than what would actually fit in there.
Okay. Now the trip gen's based on 80 seats, and I'm not overly concerned about the restaurant trip generation, but I'm more concerned of it in relation to parking. Lieutenant Anderson made the good point about employees having to park elsewhere, but I think just patrons of the restaurant, might have some issues trying to find a place to park. Scott, did you sort of do any sort of observations about available on-street parking?
So we were planning to, and then a lot of the activity was, or a lot of the area was under construction in the summer. So we weren't able to, we didn't think it would be a good representation of the parking.
We did one already. So we did that as part of the Downtown Envision project. I can pass that to the both of you guys. So we did a whole parking set because we were looking at the reconfiguration and there's going to be some spaces that go away and all of that. So we can provide that to you guys if you'd like. Yeah. And I know that speaking of Envision, I think that right in the area along Main Street in front of the site, it looks like based on some of the original or some of the earlier plans, it would and the layouts for the parking spaces, it would be about a reduction of 8 spaces.
in
think so.
that area, but I know, Bill, that you were modifying some of the plans when we were in the process of doing the study. So we just, we didn't really, we looked at it for envision and what the changes would be, but again, it didn't seem to be that things were going to change all that much.
Yeah, we ended up looking, I think we're looking at Center Street or one of the side streets to add some parking too. So that was part of how this was what happened. But I mean, keep in mind the whole, like Chestnut Street, for example, is all 2-hour parking anyway, right?
Right.
If I recall. So that's all restricted. So I mean, I wouldn't expect to see those employees able to park in that specific area. I mean, that would be good for the businesses. We should be in good shape for the restaurant. So that actually kind of supports the restaurant use pretty well.
Yep, we agree.
Yep. And then one other question on parking. So the smaller lot under the building, will any of the spaces be designated for certain units? Or is it just going to be whatever's there is available to anyone that lives there?
That depends. I mean, it depends on the nature of the project, how the zoning board wants to handle it, Matt.
Yeah, the reason I ask is just because that's, that sort of landlocked lot is, 5 or 6 spaces. If somebody pulls in there and doesn't find a space, you got people sort of doing an awkward 3-point turn to get out of there and going into the other lot. It just seems like there could be a lot of recirculation if those spots are just open to anyone.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you have to designate them for certain units, but I'm just talking in terms of circulation. That could be a little bit challenging.
That's fine. That's kind of a catch-22 too, because if people live there, go south for the winter, for example, you hate to have a space designated for them, and it's not being.
No, gotcha. Yeah, I don't want to make it too restrictive, but it is kind of just some awkward circulation of people looking for parking spaces, especially since you're just under what's required. So
Yep. Nope, that makes sense.
I think that's about all I have.
Yeah, and I think as far as the restaurant goes, Matt, if this is going to be dinner time only, there's plenty of available parking in the square. It would be the lunch piece, that would be tough on some days. Monday, Tuesdays, not so much. Wednesday through even Saturday, it can be tough for lunchtime hours. So, and that's from our parking enforcement officers that are out there every day seeing the turnover, and they do a great job to make sure that there is turnover there for our businesses. But it's depends on the day. So dinner hours, I don't see an issue with people being able to find a space right out front or nearby. It would be like you said, it'd be the workers. Dan and Lois.
Yeah, I have a couple of quick questions. As far as employee parking or business, I believe on the item lot on the west side is business parking.
Well, the item lot, the item lot's private property. They may have allowed for some local businesses to use their lot, but it wouldn't be
Signed up.
No, it's signed up. They're allowing it for basically for open parking, for public parking.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have that. That's a new thing.
And also, as far as accessibility from the Ace building out to Chestnut Street, is that just an agreement or is that a legal access?
What is that, Dan? What the
accessibility from the Ace building to Chestnut Street?
what's the Ace
Like
building?
is that legal or is that just an agreement?
Albion Cultural Exchange.
Yeah, well, I'm looking into that with Bill because there's some easements back there, so we're going to look at that and we'll get Tom Mullen involved if we need to.
Yeah, we actually applied for a grant, Dan, for that, just as a heads up. So.
Yeah, because we got a grant, I think, for an elevator coming down in the back there.
Not that one. We went after a separate grant for that, but we'll have a better handle on once we look at the easement and where the accessibility to that building should be. We've been waffling back and forth internally here and in Steve's office, whether we do it through the back or through the front. So
Bill, we can help, and we've got a lot of title work. We hired a title company to take a look at those easements. There were 2 easements back there. One was terminated. We have on record. Another one's in existence, but to the extent and what it's for, we need to vet that and go through it.
And also, as far as the restaurant, where would the loading zone be for supplies for the restaurant?
Rick,
Likely to the front, although there would be an opportunity, I guess we could cut a door into the back. Coming back, I mean, there's opportunities on all sides of the building to create it. Since it hasn't been laid out yet, you know, it's kind of tough to understand where the kitchen's gonna be and where that area wants to be, probably on Chestnut Street.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Dan. I think there's already a lot of loading and unloading in the square on Main Street anyway, just
Yeah.
because of the nature of, you know, the where the business is located. So I think if that could put onto the Chestnut Street side, that would be preferable. Joe Conway or anybody else from TAC?
I think Bill addressed everything I had.
Okay, this time we'll open it up to public comment. If you could raise your hand and state your name. Anybody from the public that would like to speak on agenda item number 7, you could just unmute and state your name. All right, Brian, I'll turn it back to you to close.
we're all set. I'll work through Bill Renault again on this, Lieutenant, some of these
Excellent.
miscellaneous items and easements and the other items that were brought up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Make sure, and Bill will make sure Rick, you make sure the sidewalk improvements are detailed on the plan.
Yes, we'll do.
Right. Thank you.
Redevelopments with no public comment. That's gotta be a record.
There
We're on a roll.
we go.
All right, item number 8, the Northeast Metro Tech School reviewing their traffic plan and
Thank you.
roundabout design for a proposed vocational school. Who would like to kick it off?
This is Brian Zamoka. I'm the traffic engineer for this. I don't
Hi,
know
Brian.
if somebody from PMA wanted to give a little summary. Or someone from the architectural team. Oh, seems like we're missing a few people, but
All right, looks like you're the guy.
You're right, Brian.
guess I am the guy. So let me share my screen real quick because I think everybody saw we submitted the new plan that shows obviously the roundabout at the relocated driveway. 11-foot lanes we're providing through there, 18-foot lane through the roundabout, and well, 11-foot approach lanes at all approaches. Have the sidewalk along the north side, and then we have some sidewalk continuing up this way. Dave, I think I saw you on the line. Is there anything you wanted to really talk about? Like
No, just since we last saw this committee back in September, the location did move farther south, so that we have less wetland impacts, and also just this configuration, the T intersection. I mean, we're being fairly generous with what we're showing along as Farm Street as far as like sidewalk widths and things like that, just to make sure we capture all the impacts. And we have our sidewalk along the north side of the driveway. So I think we had that. We were showing that in September last time we saw you guys, but if we didn't, it's there now.
Okay, great. And do you guys have anything to present on the actual traffic flow on site and circulation and sidewalks and all of that? Are you just focusing on the roundabout for this meeting?
Well, I mean, today we were just, our understanding was we were just going to be talking about the roundabout. I think in previous meetings, we met in June and back in September, we talked, and I can share the overall site plan if folks are interested in it.
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of public concern about the access road and whether or not it's going to have adequate roadway width or lane width, and if there's sidewalks or not. So that's if that's not something that you're prepared to present today, we could go over that in a future meeting, or if you are, then we could I just want to address that at some point.
Yeah, we can walk through the site. If I can share my screen, I think if I do it, we're gonna kick off.
Sure.
Lions. So can everyone see this?
Yep, we can.
All right. So just to recap, this new school building will be located in the center of your screen up here. The existing school building is at the lower campus area. This will be a new fields. We're developing parking in the lower campus. There's sidewalks. There's an accessible walkway from the lower campus to the school itself, which is accommodated by a boardwalk that's kind of like set, so it's kind of floating above the grade. If I zoom in a little bit, we can see the boardwalk with accessibility also through the locker room building on the lower campus. So that, but most of the parking is down the lower campus, and then we have the roadway through, circulation around the school, which will be limited with gates. A lot of because it's a vocational school, there's a need for truck access to a bunch of the vocational classrooms, which happens along this edge, but also along the back edge as well. Then the driveway continues through, again, a parking lot adjacent to the school to accommodate folks, and then the driveway out, and this sidewalk running along the driveway out to Farm Road to be probably connected to some improvements that the town's looking to do out on Farm Street. That's just a quick overview. Again, the site plan really hasn't changed since, beyond the driveway and the T intersection, since we presented it back in June and September. So if folks want to ask us questions or have concerns about it, we can start to entertain those now.
Yeah, so I think, David, the main one that I've heard recently, and there may be some members of the public that might present. If not, I have an email to read into the record, but I'll save that if they come in and present during public comment. Was if you can zoom in again on Hemlock Road, past the gate on that newly created access driveway. They were concerned about, the cliff drop off there and the width of that access road, and whether there would be sidewalks along that access road there. And in speaking to the acting fire chief the other day, and I'm not sure if Chief Purcell's on or not, but we were kind of discussing if there was an incident that happened with a school bus or something like that. En route to the school, or something that required a fire truck and apparatus to be on there, where would they be unloading students from a school bus or getting people to safety, given the fact that it's kind of it's a tight access road with really not a whole lot of space on either side, or at least it doesn't appear that way because of the drop off.
Are we we talking on the roadway up to?
Yes. Yep. Exactly. Yep.
So
maybe you could just dive into the width of the travel lanes, whether it's going to be one-way traffic or two-way traffic, if there is or isn't a sidewalk proposed, because we're looking at it from a traffic safety end. If something were to happen along that end, like kind of where those stairs are.
Right.
We
have two 12-foot lanes, and the geometry is, there's obviously a lot of vertical climb as you're coming up, but we've tried to minimize any of the horizontal geometry. There isn't a sidewalk along that roadway. You know, again, it was a decision made to kind of not have pedestrians walking along it. You know, first off, accessibility reasons, but also just to, you know, separate them from the vehicles. And there's also, you know, obviously guardrails along the lower side of it. So it's fairly gentle horizontal geometry running up and down with two 12-foot lanes. I think the total pavement might end up being, what, 25 feet, actually. And then, yes, you know, it was a conscious decision to kind of separate out the pedestrian traffic away from that.
Okay, so where would what would the pedestrian route be? Would it be kind of up that stairway across, or you could walk us through that?
Try this. So if you were a student and you were coming up, and that's if you wanted to take the boardwalk. And here's the main entrance here.
Okay.
And then obviously they could also follow the stairs up the entire way. Now, which is this feature.
So the first one you did the kind of feed out there, that's handicap accessible. It's more of a, like,
yeah, with the exception being if it's for handicap accessibility, you'd be going through the building. There's an elevator in the building, so you would go into the building and take it up to the second floor, and your journey would start here.
Okay. All right, I understand.
And then the quickest route for a pedestrian with the ability to do the stairs would just be up the stairs themselves.
So I think their concern was, you know, it makes sense what you're saying, that, you know, the decision was made not to install a sidewalk to discourage pedestrians from using that, but what if they do, you know, and that's, I think that was the public's concern was, you know.
Right, but remember, it is a school campus. So it'll be very, there's going to be, it will be managed so that students will not be using that. And I don't really see why there would be a desire for someone to kind of ever want to walk down that piece of it. And we can make sure with their signage directing folks who might not be familiar with the campus, although again, it's a school campus, to use the pedestrian way to lower campus.
Okay. Bill, anything on your end?
No, I mean, from my perspective, I think they addressed the two big questions or the big asks we had at the last TAC. So the roundabout's in and the sidewalk was installed. Those were the two big takeaways, I think, from September. You know, obviously, I think I've talked to them before about my concerns there, and they've addressed them. So I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing here. The accessible route going down to the lower campus, though, I mean, I think we talked about that a little bit, Dave, that, you know, I don't know how reasonable or how usable a 2,000-foot, you know, ramp system is for somebody in a wheelchair. I mean, I just can't see somebody doing that. So aside from that, I think, you know, we'd probably look at different accommodations or something to be able to get folks from the upper and lower campus.
Right. I think that's something the schools can talk to you about.
Yeah, and they're going to be presenting at the Disability Commission too at the next meeting. So I'm hoping all of that will be resolved there, which is a good thing. So other than that, from my perspective, traffic-wise, I'm good with what I'm seeing.
Okay. Let me just jump to Kevin real quick before we continue on with members of the TAC has his hand raised.
Thank you, Lieutenant, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to echo what Bill said. Our engineers have been working very closely with his department on adding the sidewalk and the showing the configuration of the rotary. And just by means of an update, and I'll let you know that we're still progressing cooperatively through the Conservation Commission process, through our notice of intent process, and we expect to head into the next phase of our order of conditions very soon. And I'd like to thank the engineering department and Concom. We've made a lot of improvements to this site by way of storm, water, and drainage improvements through the review period. I also like to say that we are are planning to submit to the ZBA. We just received our letter from the building inspector that allows us to submit to the ZBA next week. And as Bill said, at the request of Bill in the town, we're putting together an accessibility meeting. We'd like to host it at the school if possible. We're going to have a presentation on the whole project and the accessibility of the whole site as well. Bill, I think the targeted date for that might be March 6th.
Yeah, March 6th. So I think, Kevin, what we would do is just have you at one of our regularly scheduled disability commission meetings. It's a Zoom meeting typically. And, you know, we're going to invite all the district commissions to attend. So you'll have one set of comments and questions in one meeting that will talk about all of that, hopefully. So, so that you're not hearing from different commissions and committees, at least the folks will be able to have one meeting to come out and discuss it. And, you know, if you have to go back in the April meeting to talk about some things you're addressing or whatever, that would probably be the process on that end. So.
Yeah, we watched the video from January 6th. We'll watch the video if it goes up from this week on the commission, and we'll be prepared to answer all those questions so that they can give advice to the ZBA. Hope it doesn't take more than a meeting, but we're there to listen and present.
Right on. Sounds good. Appreciate it, Kevin.
We'll go to Matt Keeley.
Thanks. Just a couple of questions on the roundabout. I'm not sure who's the best to answer this, but what was the design vehicle that was used for the layout that we have?
I believe it was a WB50.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious if there was any opportunity to make it smaller, but it's probably the right size for what it needs to be. Is there any way to smooth out that little kink that's just to the east of it on the new driveway? Just kind of has that little.
Yeah, I mean, right
there.
Oh, on the driveway.
Yeah, right where basically right where it says 131.
Yeah, we're actually that's to avoid wetland impacts.
Okay.
So we worked. So the one you saw in September was a little bit more had less horizontal geometry.
Mm-hmm.
We worked hard kind of through the fall to kind of make this less impactful to the wetlands. So the alignment that you're looking at now doesn't fill any of the jurisdictional wetlands, has wildlife crossings. We've tried to like minimize, I can't say eliminate, but I think minimize any work within a 25-foot buffer. So those are all important points for it. So that's why we have the little wiggle.
You could look at that island, the median thing that you're doing there, and maybe look to shrink that. I mean, that doesn't necessarily need to be that long. I mean, you could look at it from that perspective too.
Yeah, but we could, and again, we would just wanted to be conservative with the impacts. We didn't want to like oversell anything. So as we refine it, if that island wants to be something smaller, we can pull those impacts in farther south. That's a good thing. But we wanted to make sure we were, you know, again, we just weren't, you know, being overly liberal with our assumption.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think it's great that you got it to fit in there. Just maybe if there's refinements that can be made to smooth that out a little bit. I'm sure you can, you know, make minor tweaks to just straighten that alignment out a little bit.
Yeah, and that's where this actually, do you mind if I? I'm sorry. Thought I had it up. I had an overlay of the two at one point, but yeah, that kink might be one where we can bring it in a little bit.
Okay. And then the last question I had was on the black and white plan. There was just a note on the plan that said Farm Street improvements by others. So just sort of curious where we stand on how this would get done.
The town's working with the school on that.
Okay.
Steve Mayo and I are working with the district on that.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't know the last time we talked. It was a little bit of an unknown. So
yep.
That's all I got.
Dan and Lois.
A couple of quick questions again. On the handicap parking, do you have a number how many would be on that upper level and how many would be on the lower level? And is that rampage that they got going down to the lower level, is that covered during the winter time?
David, would you like Carl, the architect, to address some of these questions on accessibility? Is they're really the accessibility experts?
And yeah, that would be great, because I also just lost where that, oh, here it is, the nice site plan is.
Yeah, Carl Franceschi, our project architect from DRA, is on the call, and Vlad Lubinsky. If we could ask either Carl or Vlad to answer that and walk you through it. Vlad, I see your name there, and I'm just trying to scroll through it. Would you, if you or Carl would like to speak up, please?
Hello, Kevin.
Hey, it's Carl. Thank you.
Hello, this is Carl Franceschi with DRA Architects. The question was about the distribution of handicap parking. Dan, was that it?
Yes, the upper level and the lower level. And also, is that concrete? Is that wooden, that rampage? And how are they going to clear that during the wintertime?
Sure. I think we're best prepared to address those at the Disabilities Commission. I don't have the exact numbers of handicap parking spaces, but if we go back to the plan, Dave, they are distributed around the existing, the proposed building. There are multiple entrance points into the new school. There are entrances for visitors to the administration, for visitors to the restaurant and cosmetology salon, and then an events entrance by the gym and the auditorium. So each of those entrances has handicap parking associated with it in close proximity, as well as in the rear of the school, there's an entrance to the early childhood preschool program with handicap parking there. So there's a good distribution of parking spaces around the proposed building. And then the walkway itself would be better prepared. I don't have the photographs. We have some photographs to show how that that walkway is really, it is a ramping system, but it's also sort of doubles as a nature walk with minimal impact on the surroundings. One of the reasons that it is sort of a boardwalk is that we wanted to minimize the disruption to trees and to the grading there. So we're trying to work with the existing grades. The ramp is slightly elevated above the ground so that we're minimizing blasting and minimizing tree removal to install that. It is a wood-like product. It's that, you know, what you see in decking. So it doesn't, you know, deteriorate like wood does. It is not covered. It is, you know, sort of thread through the trees there, but the school is committed to keep it clear, you know, for the winter. Though, and again, we'll explain all this at the disability in better detail and all, but the reality is.
Was that 2,000, somebody was saying, ramps?
I'm sorry?
Was that 2,000 feet of ramps?
I don't believe it's that long. I don't have the exact number in front of us. We can have all that for the Disabilities Commission. The school is committed to, you know, keeping it clear and keeping the steps clear. But the reality is they would certainly make accommodation for disabled students or teachers. Obviously, teachers are going to park right next to the school. Students who might need to get from the school down to the lower would be accommodated with a vehicle, a van that can transport students. Right now, they have just one student who has that need. We'll have better information on historically what the accommodations have been. And of course, in the lower parking lot, there are handicap spaces distributed there as well, both for the spectators to events on the athletic fields and for students who might be attending those events down in the lower fields.
Can you picture what this rampage really looks like? I've never really seen a picture of it. I've seen it going.
Chairman, if I could, this is Kevin.
We do. As we said, we'll be presenting that at the Disabilities Commission. I don't have access to that right now. It would take me a while to find that, but we did have very good pictures that show what this will look like. Yes.
Yeah, the handicap spacing issue is definitely within the purview of TAC, but I want to keep it kind of to traffic if we could. So let's.
My apologies. I thought I was sharing my drawing while Kyle was speaking, but just real quickly, handicap at the front. This is an automotive, some more handicap parking in the rear. This is the entrance for childcare, more handicap parking. Main upper parking lot more handicap parking, and then on the lower campus adjacent to the locker room building and the fields.
Okay, and you guys will present those numbers and particulars at the Disability Commission.
We will, thank you, Lieutenant.
Excellent, thank you. Anybody else from TAC? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to public comment. If you could raise your hand and state your name when you speak. I have Bob first. Bob?
Good morning, Bob Brooks, 7 June. I have a couple questions. The first one is, I remember, I think it was 2020 or 2021, that they calculated the number of trips to the school, which I thought was like 3,250, somewhere about that number. Has an updated traffic report been done for the most recent results? Because I believe that time when they did it, I remember them having strips across Farm Street, and that was still not in the middle, but towards the end of the pandemic. And I want to see how accurate the number of trips would be at this time. That's my first question.
I could say a revised traffic study has not been completed at this time. You know, it was always direction from MassDOT and from municipalities to during that time to use that the existing data, and it's grown for COVID adjustments. We haven't been scoped to redo the traffic study, so that'll have to be coordinated. That's deemed necessary by the board.
Have any idea when it might be?
When it might be? We haven't planned them yet, so I don't know when they would be.
Okay. My second question, as far as the maps that's up there now, could we look towards where the roundabout is, the rotary in that area? The two things is two of my neighbors and people I talk to who are both abutters. I won't mention their names, but one happens to live on 161 Farm Street and houses directly where the roundabout is now, more north facing before Old Nahat Road. And which she'd like to find out exactly where the house is located on there compared to that. And she was concerned about issues on how she was going to get on Nahat Street going south or going north with the amount of traffic and the backup consistent with coming into a rotary. And the addition to that question is one of the other abutters, which is a 100-foot abutter from the Saugus area where Harmon Road is. And if you look towards the bottom, you can, I don't know, not see if you can see it clearly on that map. And they were wondering, coming out of Harmon Road, if they wanted to go south towards the high school, how are they going to get by that middle intersection piece that divides the two roadways north and south? Has that been addressed?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, I think these approaches and the because these are still conceptual, Bob. I think we talked about this a little bit. The intent, they're showing it with probably more impact horizontally to make sure that they're capturing it for this for the permit with Conservation Commission. Realistically, I wouldn't expect to have these medians to be extended that long. If they choose to do that on their own site, that's their call, but we wouldn't have them that long. They don't really need to be that long, and we wouldn't really design them to be that long.
Yeah, they were just concerned because the amount of traffic anticipated that we see daily with the roundabout, it would definitely have a calming effect that that the town really, you know, the Lieutenant Anderson and you specifically want to get done. But how much the backup was trying to get out of not only that area, but from the north side, Old Nahat Road, June Circle, and that, because, you know, during traffic times and football games and everything else that goes on. The traffic, you can look out my street and just see the traffic just totally backed up.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's the operation by the high school too, with everyone going and being focused right to Hemlock. I mean, that's a big part of that. And how that intersection really doesn't operate well, and is configured sort of, kind of offset. All of those are really impacting the traffic in this area. So we're thinking it slows the traffic down in dismissal times. And then during dismissal times, it rather than having lights in these situations, which would back things up a lot further, this allows more capacity to be able to move around. So we're anticipating this to be less backup by having this configuration and the roundabout at the school as well. So that's the intent.
Do you have an idea what you anticipate the percentage, if you took all the consideration of all the traffic, do you have a percentage what you think we anticipated, what would use, how much Hemlock would be used versus the new access road?
I think that's a question for the school.
Yeah, we did break that out. I don't have the study in front of me. I want to say it was, we estimated it to be balanced, maybe slightly more on the access way. But unfortunately, I don't have those numbers up in front of me.
How do you base that on the access way? Is it because you anticipate the traffic coming out and where the students and parents are coming from?
So there's multiple levels. It's the directional traffic distribution on Farm Street, also where the school is located on site, where it's most accessible. And then general, just, engineering estimates, and it's calculated, but it's based on existing data. I mean, there's no hard, fast way to say exactly how many people are going to come out. It's a best guess based on engineering experience.
Bob, I don't want to cut you off, but I do want to leave time for other abutters.
Absolutely.
I
Thank you.
appreciate your comments and questions, so.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No problem. Next member from the public. Bronwyn.
Good morning. I did have a couple of clarification questions. Is there going to be a traffic signal at Hemlock at some point?
No, we're with the high school, we're looking at a roundabout as well.
Okay, so no light then.
No lights on either one. Yeah. That's the goal.
Okay,
We would prefer not to maintain them, obviously. We
right.
think it's gonna have a worse traffic impact. So that's why we're focusing on roundabouts for both locations.
Yeah, what's proposed there is a complete realignment with the roundabout to improve that whole intersection.
Yeah, thank you. That was my next question. So that there are still plans for Hemlock to be realigned.
Yeah, that'll be with the roundabout. That would be realigned. Yep, that's still on the table.
Okay, that's great. And also another clarification, are there going to be sidewalks on Hemlock all the way up to the vocational school?
I don't believe the team included that in their design, right?
No, we stop at the property lines. We're not allowed to spend money out left and right of property lines. I assume you mean from, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to make an assumption. Is it from the intersection of Farm and Hemlock up? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. I just wanted to make sure that there was
building a sidewalk there. No.
Okay, so no sidewalk on Hemlock from the high school on up to the Voc, is that correct?
It's not in our plans. It's not our property, ma'am.
It's a Wakefield High School project.
Okay, all right. All right,
That might
then.
be something with a future meeting at TAC, Bronwyn, to bring up too with the high school.
Yeah, I think that's something we'd be looking at in that in that process.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next we have Brian.
Thank you. I'm Brian Thompson at 65 Prospect Street, resident of Wakefield for 41 years. I'm an architect and urban planner, and I have written letters to the school building authority on this project. voicing my concerns about the hazard created at the boardwalk and walkways up from the lower campus to the upper campus. I think it's quite disingenuous to say that that can be maintained by the school in the event of a weather event like we had the last time it snowed. It changed from rain to snow in the afternoon, just about the time school was letting out, I suspect. And in 2 hours, there were 4 inches. Those walkways probably conform to rise and run of stairs and length of ramp and so forth, but uncovered, they will be extremely hazardous for many times in the winter season. And even if they're covered, they would need to be.
Brian, I don't want to interrupt you or cut you off, but I think it's probably a better suited question for the Board of Appeals if we could try to keep the questioning or comments steer more toward traffic. But I
addressed in Rotary and my experience, I'm a walker in Breakheart on a daily basis, and sometimes I get caught up in the exit from the school and from the high school. And it's been my observation, this is not scientific because I don't have traffic counts, but it's been my observation that the predominant load of exiting on Hemlock is going on a right turn back towards Wakefield, back towards either Nahant Street or Water Street. The traffic backs up at Hemlock, and the proportion between those turning right and turning left is something like 3 to 1 in a normal exit environment. This access road, if that proportion holds, this access road is simply moving that point to further towards Saugus, and much of that traffic will be turning right and winding up at Hemlock again. And I don't see that it is benefiting the traffic flow out of the schools, because one of the problems is left turns from Hemlock are blocked by traffic coming into Wakefield from the Saugus direction. So the other thing I question is the idea of a roundabout at all. These are peak hour afternoon points of congestion that last, in my experience, about 30 minutes. For a school year of 180 days or 185 days, whatever, about half a year, for 30 minutes, we're spending hundreds of thousands, if not a few $1 million in road improvements. When the rest of the time, Hemlock is completely free. I've never been blocked coming into Hemlock, either for an early morning walk, an afternoon walk, walks during when I get there when the schools are letting out, I'm going in. So I would really be curious about the cost benefit analysis of spending the money on A, the roundabout itself, and B, the second access road.
Okay.
I don't think that's really been addressed.
All right. Thank you very much. Next is Eleanor.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Eleanor Axelrod, 19 Sheffield Road. I guess I wanted to focus in on emergency situations. If you could, share the screen and kind of scroll to the right closer to the Hemlock Road entrance. I guess as I understand it, the roads are pretty narrow. We don't have sidewalks. The campus is bounded on the west by a cliff on one side, and then pretty steep riprap walls, if you will, on the east side. So I'm curious about these two situations. One, if a student or someone falls on their way up those stairs or, along that ramp, coming to and from school, and you need emergency vehicles to get in there, how is that going to affect the traffic, and will cars be able to go by if an ambulance is, stopped in the middle of that road between Hemlock and the school? If you could answer that question.
Yeah, it looks like, and I'll let them answer, but it looks like there is 2 lanes with adequate roadway width for emergency vehicles on that access road there, right? Like anytime you introduce a fire truck or an ambulance into a school circulation, it's definitely going to cause a traffic issue, no doubt. But to your point, it's obviously a narrow access road, but it does have the width to accommodate emergency vehicles and still have that other lane. But I'll let the development team maybe give you more on that, unless you had anything else for us.
Yes, I mean, if you're satisfied with that, that's fine. My second question is regarding an emergency situation in which you have to evacuate the students from the building and get them a good distance away from the school. How will that happen, given the campus is essentially bounded in, and either students would have to go down an 8-foot wide steps or the 8-foot wide ramp, or down along the road without sidewalks? I'm just not sure how students would be safely evacuated.
Okay, thank you.
So obviously the parking lot to the west of the school is fairly large, and I think it's worth mentioning is obviously the scale of this project is very large. The scale of this drawing is very large. In no way are the roadways not generous. I mean, they're 25 feet wide. We have sidewalks throughout the site. We're not, these aren't single lane roads that we're proposing. The far end of that parking lot from the school is probably 200 feet away from it. If the school needed to be evacuated. So we hear the concerns, but I just want to point out that the scale of this drawing is fairly quite large, and we have detailed drawings if people want to dive into like a 20 scale, but
Mr. Chairman, this is Kevin again, if I could.
Yep.
I believe part of the question is something that every school in the state is required to do, is working with the fire department and the building department before occupancy. We will have our emergency evac maps posted to the classrooms. They will do fire drills in the first several weeks of school, and they'll teach the kids how to evacuate the school depending on where they are in the case of an emergency, and there'll be areas of refuge all around the school. And that's something we work out during occupancy with the building inspector.
Yeah, and I appreciate the public participation, because that's there's probably many people that speak before TAC, especially for this development, that may not even have kids that are going to the school, and they're concerned about their well-being and what the plans are. But unfortunately, some of these overlaps. It's kind of traffic, but a lot of it has to do with ultimately the Board of Appeals and how they look at a development like this. So I would encourage further participation in that board's meeting as well. And I appreciate the participation, and I think that it should probably continue on to the Board of Appeals, because we can only really look at traffic, and some does kind of overlap to a degree when access roads go to pedestrian walkways and where handicap spaces are. So there's multiple boards involved in this. So I would just encourage the public's continued participation in those boards and committees. So thank you. Next we have Paul Rybicki, and Paul, we spoke on the phone the other day briefly, and I was going to read your email into the record, but it looks like you're here, so I'd be better suited to just have you jump on.
I wanted to thank you for your time, and if the thing is going to be read in its entirety into the record, that's fine. I just wanted to interject a discussion about the no sidewalk to the main front entrance, that long, narrow climb to the school.
I'm gonna have you
Um,
just speak, Paul, because it'd be, I don't need to read it into the record unless you weren't gonna be here. Personally, I would have done that for you, so you can just comment on it.
All right, no problem. I met with the acting fire chief the other day and talked with Lieutenant Anderson about my concerns, which fall into three categories. The main obstacles that I see to a safe and efficient school. Number one, the driveway that comes up from Hemlock, the lack of a sidewalk there is an egregious, gross design error that's going to cause kids to get hurt. If you look at the diagram today, I want you to look where it says 90 feet, right at the base of the hill climb. And you'll notice there's two other lots that say 40 and 40. So what's going to happen with those people parked in either of those remote lots or the people that are in the lot over by the access driveway? Are there going to be a plan to have either police or someone from the school preventing pedestrian use of the driveway? Or will pedestrians be allowed to use the driveway at their own risk?
And
Sounds
Paul,
like
do you want to continue on with some of your points, and then we'll turn it over to the development team if you have any others.
All right, yeah. So that was a question that was hoping for an answer at that point because it drives the conversation. However, that driveway without, maybe you can get emergency vehicle up there, but it's just going to be a matter of time. And it's embarrassing and disappointing that the $300 million school was designed with no sidewalks. And I'm the one who had to ask at the design review why there's no sidewalk going on the south. And now the town is making them put in a sidewalk, which is awesome. But this danger is so obvious to me that it's just upsetting because it just looks like a public safety danger that should not be allowed in my eyes. But going on from the sidewalk, the next issue has already been discussed. I had talked in detail about people who don't have a handicap plate, but might have the flu, might have a bad toe, might have anything else that's not 100% feeling good, having to deal with 100 steps, 10 flights of stairs, or a 736-foot long elevated ramp is ludicrous. And it is going to jeopardize the safety of the students for the next 50 to 100 years. They're regularly going to get injured on the steps. They're going to get injured on the ramp. There's no way to maintain a ramp that's elevated like that. My front stairs, even a little bit of frost on that artificial plastic decking becomes dangerous. But the last option really had to do with issues that were already talked about. The emergency access on the main driveway to the front of the building doesn't have any good way to evacuate people with a guardrail on one side and a rock catchment zone on the other. It's just completely baffling that somebody could design a school with this much disregard for inclusive design. Inclusive design would really be the least barriers for the most amount of people. And I see this as the opposite and a complete disaster waiting to happen when it's done as far as injuries. There'll be plenty of EMT calls that could have been avoided over the next 50 to 100 years. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Paul. Anybody from the development team want to answer or comment on any of those points, or should we move on to further public comment?
We'll take it under advisement, Lieutenant, and we'll hope to address it at our next accessibility meeting.
Okay. I have KJ is the next. You want to unmute your mic and state your name?
Thank you very much. Sorry. The last I understood, the last approved.
Could you just state your name for the record, please?
Oh, Karen Johnson, Malden.
Thank you very much.
I believe the last approved design did not include the athletic support building. So I don't know why it's still there as part of the design. I don't, as far as I understood, it was gone. That's my question.
Okay. Anybody else from the public have any comments before we turn it back over to the development team? Megan, if you could unmute, state your name.
Hi, thank you. Megan McDonough, 185 Main Street, Melrose. I'm a disabled person and I advocate on disability issues in Melrose. I'm not a commissioner, but I have been in touch with many of the commission on this issue. And they had suggested to pursue the traffic commission or Mass DOT with some of the road concerns. And so I know that some of the, I'm sorry, I'm joining late. I know that some of the talk about sidewalks not being able to be places because it was a plus 5% grade. When they brought it up to the Architectural Access Board, they said if there was a sidewalk on something that was plus 5%, then it wouldn't be an ADA standard. But if their sidewalk was removed, then they couldn't speak to an ADA concern about people traveling in that space. So over the course of the project discussions that I've been aware of in the last couple of months, it seems like a sidewalk is introduced and then removed. And I just, again, sorry if you've already covered it, don't worry about it, but just concerned about where sidewalks are going to be, if they're going to stay there, if they're going to shift. And then as far as ramp travel, when I discussed a many 100-foot ramp, 735-foot ramp, which may have even gotten longer because of a project change, they said that you could have an 8% grade ramp to the moon, from Boston to the moon, and as long as it was at 8%, it would be ADA, and so it's actually legal under the law, but no mobility challenged people or people with age concerns, athletic injuries, disabled tradespeople would be able to use it, but you couldn't challenge it under ADA law. So that's concerning to me, that things seem to be brushed away with mention of ADA law, if it's, like Paul had said, spatially exclusive or seeking an inclusive design. So that was one question. And my other question was, when I don't know if this is the space to clarify this or not, but I understand when there's like traffic changes or I don't know if the term is like level of service changes, but in environmentally sensitive areas, like when it is necessary to do an EPA review. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody else that hasn't had a chance to speak from the public? I see some other hands of those that have already had an opportunity. So I want to.
Do we want to try to answer Megan's questions? I mean, or no?
Yeah, we could. Yeah, Bill, if you have.
So Megan, just to be aware, there will be a disability commission meeting that the Metro Tech will be presenting at, and we've invited all of the member community commissions and ADA coordinators to go. I'm Wakefield's ADA coordinator, so we've definitely discussed the ramp and concerns on that and requested other accommodations to be provided. But I think there's going to be a pretty robust discussion on the 6th of March that would probably answer that question and hopefully address your concerns there. And then your other point on the level of service, I wasn't following where that was going, so I'm not understanding what that question was.
Do I have a chance to clarify that?
Yep.
Of course you do. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, if there's like greater traffic congestion or traffic slowdown, and I know I'm not a traffic engineer. These things were brought up to me. I'm trying to repeat them in the best way that I can. So if there's increased traffic or perhaps traffic slowdown because of a change like the roundabout, then is there, like, at what point around wetlands, at what point is an environmental review necessary?
Project is going through an environmental review now, and then incorporates the the roundabout. So that's happening and we're doing it.
And you're doing it, do you happen to know if there's a number where I could follow that? Like
Yeah, the Conservation Commission for Wakefield's Conservation Commission is hearing this right now. So that hearing was opened a while back. They've been going through a series of changes and comments from my group, as well as some of the comments from the public. And they've been working to address those comments over the last couple months.
Okay,
That's
great.
ongoing.
Okay. Okay, thanks so much. Is that the same thing as like an Office of Energy and the Environment review?
That's different. Those are different.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a higher level review for other types if they hit certain thresholds, which I don't believe they do on this project, but yeah, so that's different. This is our local conservation commission that looks at the wetlands and all of that.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks so much.
Well, thank you for answering some of those. Anybody else from the public that hasn't had a chance to speak yet? We do have another agenda item to get to. All right, I'm gonna go, Paul, I'll give you a minute and then Bob will give you a minute, okay?
Thank you.
Paul first.
The only thing I wanted to add was the follow-up that I mentioned about people walking up that narrow driveway. What I'm noticing on the diagram here is that the main lot with 166 spots is actually sloping downgrade. So people who are parked are you really expecting people who are in the far top of that lot or the lot with 40 and 40 people, you expect them to walk downhill from a 90-foot elevation down to the 84-foot elevation, which would be way out of the way, and then go up a 735-foot ramp or 10 flights of stairs. I think that the way it's designed is going to force people who are running late for class, who just don't have the time or want to go the direct route. There's going to be heavy mix of vehicle with pedestrians. It just looks like it's inevitable, especially with the topography. It would be baffling if you saw students walking downhill past 20 spots to go ahead and then climb the next 75 feet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Bob, you're next.
Yeah, probably just a couple simple questions. During this project, will the guard shacks on Hemlock Road still be in working order or still be attended? And will there be a guard shack at the other opening off the access road?
That's actually a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Mr. Chairman, the existing guard shack will remain, and there is no guard shack proposed at the interchange at Farm Street in the driveway.
Okay, second question is the roadway that goes behind the school, is that going to be a one-way or is it a two-way? If you're
Carl,
looking
I
up,
need your help there.
Sorry, the service drive behind the new school, it's designed that it could be two-way, but I believe operationally that the school's preference is to make it one-way in the clockwise direction.
okay, do you know, excuse me, Carl, do you know what the width of that is?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't catch that.
The width of that roadway behind the school?
I believe that all two-way roadways here are at least 20 feet wide. The main driveway is 24 feet wide.
Okay, so we're looking at 24 feet. You see where the number 5 is? That's how the roadway comes around. The number 5 area is. So the width of that driveway is going to be 25 feet?
Yes.
Okay, and a final last question. As far as the amount of time and efforts put into this, and then we're talking about the Rotary, the question's never been brought up by money. Is the project going to pay for all this? Is it under their responsibility?
Bill, do you want to talk more about the, you're on mute, but the roundabout?
Yeah, we're working through that stuff now. I think we're looking at grant funding, I believe, is what the route we're going to be going for. If not, we'd be looking for the school to contribute more. But we're
Okay.
working through that. I'm working through that with Steve. Steve and I are working on that with the school.
Okay, so they're looking for grant money to pay for that, so it won't be anything for the taxpayers.
Yeah, we're not looking for the taxpayers to pay for it. That's what Steve and I
Okay.
have been discussing. So. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
great.
the goal- there's plenty of grants available for this type of thing, and then the town has opportunities for other grants. So this is a priority too for the town. I mean, we're looking at it from a traffic calming standpoint. So this body, the Traffic Advisory Committee, has received tons and tons of complaints about speeding on this road, especially coming down to the high school.
I see it all the time.
I'm sure you notice it. You're on the road, so that's the intent. So we weren't intending to use taxpayer money, but I mean, there's a benefit to the town too. So,
Okay,
we're not looking to fund the whole thing. Let's put it that way.
no, okay, I understand.
My intent is to have it not paid for by tax money.
No, I understand, but I wasn't sure. Somehow it was out there and I said, well, let me find out about that. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Thank you very much.
That's the intent, and that's obviously to be continued because we want this to happen. So if we have to put something in, obviously we can do that if we have to, but that's not the
Okay.
goal.
All right, that's fine. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me the extra time.
No problem, Bob. Thank you. Thank you for the comments. So I'm going to close out public comment now, and we'll turn it back over to members of the TAC for any final thoughts and comments.
Just two quick ones. So could you bring that plan back up for me, Dave, if you would mind? So the two questions I have is just we're hearing a lot of questions on sidewalks, right? Is there any opportunity to at least extend sidewalks down to the existing guard check? Is that an option in any way that we could do? It's a small section. You have sidewalks pretty much through the rest of the site. I know you have it going down to the ball field. Is there a way to make that happen? It looks like a small extension from what you already have now, or even a small tweak to the roadway to make that work.
We can look into. Sorry, I was muted. We can look into that.
All right, that seems like a pretty easy win here. The other thing is access to Breakheart, right? So ideally, we want pedestrian access to the site too for that, for folks that would walk up Hemlock to go there. So I see that you have a sidewalk. It looks to me like you have it all the way down from this rendering, right? Is that correct?
Correct.
Or am that's correct, right?
Yeah.
And then you have a series of parking spaces that are designated for Breakheart still, right?
Correct. And Kevin, you can elaborate on that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've been working cooperatively with DCR and the staff, engineering staff, as well as the supervisors on site. Access will be maintained throughout construction. And as you noted, Bill, there is dedicated parking for people that want to access Breakheart. And we're actually working through how to secure parking upper and lower with DCR for when they have large events during the summer and things like that. So yeah, our dialogue continues with DCR. They've been a great partner so far. We're going to keep those gates open. We're going to keep public safe during construction, and they'll have access after construction as well through the same gate.
That's great. So yeah, so I just think that's all good things. So I would just look at that section of sidewalk as a minimum. And then I think the point around the 240, the 40 parking lots over there, the two lots that are 40. I mean, I think a sidewalk is reasonable there too to get people around. I mean, I think that's a reasonable ask as well in my mind, rather than having that kind of road to, that extends between them. I think that wouldn't want people walking in a drive aisle. You already have it in other sections. I think that makes sense for the site too. So just keep that in mind as you're filing with the ZBA. That'll be a comment that comes your way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that, Bill. I think where the number 12 is there, the extension there, and from the 240 lots, all that does is encourage pedestrian access to the appropriate channel, right? So a lot of the comments that we're hearing is that some kids might use that access road to get to school if they're late. Well, and I also don't disagree with maybe some signage on the other end of that access road that says no pedestrians. Maybe something there. These are high school age kids. So between the school enforcing what the appropriate paths are on their property, signage at the end of that access road, and then encouraging people by adding a little bit of sidewalk from the guard shack and from those two 40-space lots to the appropriate pedestrian channels. I think that's a very reasonable ask on our end. I like the rotary design. I think it's going to help, especially in concert with whatever might happen with the high school development, to calm what's been an ongoing problem for decades on Farm Street. I think there's been a lot of talk back and forth about where the turning movements are. I think you can't deny the fact that a majority of students come from outside of Wakefield. Wakefield's one town, and this is a vocational school for many towns. And a lot of those students come from the Saugus end. It's just kind of the natural flow to the vocational school. So if we can get them into a roundabout and into another driveway that doesn't interfere or congest an already congested Hemlock and Farm, I think that's definitely a win. It's a win for Farm Street, whether it's peak hours, off peak hours. You know, I think you have to remember the vocational school and Breakheart is there, year round. There's courses at the vocational school year round. There's night school. It's not your traditional high school that's, just during regular hours, 180 days a year. So there's a lot of other things going on there, and there's a lot of traffic that comes from the Saugus end, and we want to do something with that traffic as a town. And I think this is an opportunity to do it. I think it's an opportunity to calm traffic. We see speeds over 50 miles an hour sometimes when we're running right out of there, and it's just too fast. It's just not safe. If we can slow kids down into a roundabout, maybe there might be a fender bender here or there at 5 miles an hour. That's far better than, the inexperienced driver pulling out of an intersection, misjudging how fast the vehicle's going on approach and getting into a T-bone collision at 30 plus miles an hour. These are just things as a TAC, it makes sense to try to support and push for. I think that's going to reduce injuries and God forbid fatalities by calming that roadway. So I'm in support of the roundabout, the design. I would, however, ask that there's some signage if and when this proposal does move forward, that alerts motorists that there's been a change in the traffic pattern. They are approaching a roundabout, because for generations it's been just a straight shot out of Saugus and a straight shot heading towards Saugus. So I think there needs to be some advance warning of the new traffic pattern ahead. But that's a sign. That's an easy thing on that end. Outside of that, I've heard a lot of comments from the public on this, and we definitely hear all of your comments. I think that it's important to continue on with the other various boards and commissions that will be reviewing this proposed development as well. So I appreciate the public's feedback. Anybody else from TAC have any comments before we turn it back to the development team?
I just had one quick clarification. If you could zoom back in right where that 105 was.
No worries. It's hard for us to follow up with everybody with renewals, so it's impossible. So
Which
just a little bit, just below where the 105 is. I just wanted to, because it kind of looks at this scale that's
okay.
sort of
the elevation. I was looking at the parking count. Go ahead.
Yeah. On the west side of the road there, is that like a rocky slope or something? It kind of looks like a path from at this scale. That's not a path of any kind, right?
That's a swale.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
That's it.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Anybody else from TAC? All right, I'll turn it back over to the development team for any closing thoughts.
Mr. Chairman, this is Kevin Nagel. I'd just like to thank you and the committee for hearing us over these the 3 hearings. We look forward to getting your comments, and if we can get anything that has to do with the disability aspect of it first, we could incorporate those comments into our upcoming meeting with Bill's group on March 6th. So again, thank you, and all great comments. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Kevin, and thank you to the rest of your team. That closes out item number 8. On to item number 969 Foundry Street, request for no parking restrictions. This is a request to modify or relocate some of the existing restrictions there. We did have some correspondence from, we have. Bill, I'm missing the email. I have it, but now I can't find it.
I'm looking for it now.
Yeah, we just had it too.
I just had it. I know. I had it too.
All right, so I have it here. It's
Oh, here we go. Okay.
Michael Jacobs. And he writes that some residents are having trouble entering and exiting driveways on their property there at 69 Foundry due to vehicles being parked too close to the edges of them, causes a blind spot there, especially with ongoing construction on our street that will most likely be ongoing for a few more years. It's a safety concern. So he's asking for those to be placed a minimum of 10 feet from the edges of the driveways. I think that was basically in summary what he was looking for. Do you have anything further on that, Bill?
Yeah, I do. Am I sharing my screen right now?
You are. Yep.
I am. I don't. Do I want to be? So you're seeing this that I'm moving right now? Is that what you're seeing?
It's kind of like a split screen, but we can see it.
Oh, you can't. Okay. All right. So so here's the deal. When this project was approved, this predates me, and they identified locations for the no parking signs. The intent was for it to be 10 feet away from the driveway apron, but it ended up like basically where that would fall would be in the middle of like this walkway and some other locations on this side. But you can see that folks are still parking in that area right now. The request really is just to move these signs to where they should be, which is like kind of on the face of curb. That's the deal. We're going to keep it 10 feet off of the driveway apron as we typically would do to allow folks to get in and out of the access. So there's two of them. This driveway apron. So you get the two signs, and then you have one other one further down here. That's right here. So what the intent would be is that this would get that 10 foot, because right now it's only about maybe 6 or 7. So it'll be moved into the curb, basically right behind the curb like we usually do, and face the actual parking folks. So that's the request. I think it makes a ton of sense. So I'm fine with moving it and just having it taken care of. I think we need to have this go to the town council, because it is a regulatory sign and that was never actually sent to them. It was just added on the plan and then added to their site. So
correct. Yeah, we do.
That approved to go up there. That's basically all it is.
Okay. Any discussion from members of TAC? Any public comment? If you could raise your hand and state your name. Last call for public comment on item number 969 Foundry Street. Bill, you want to make a motion to create a no parking restriction 10 feet from the
10 feet from the 10 feet from the existing driveway opening for 69 Foundry Street.
On both sides. Second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will send that over to town council for approval.
Cool.
Anybody from TAC have anything for item number 10? Anything not anticipated to discuss?
Not this time for me. You got anything?
I have a couple of little rant.
What do you got?
With some of the events that happen around Wakefield, and it's cars going into buildings, can we kind of, on any development going on, kind of, I know we're an advisory board, but ask that they have balusters or something in front of the buildings? I mean, I look at down near at Melly Farms, I think the car's gone into the same part of the building there twice. Cumberland Farms, I know Farmland here had somebody go into it. On Main Street, another car going, but those balusters would have helped, I think. And just as like a standard operating procedure or a checklist that developments look into maybe having something for, pedestrian safety. And also, out on 128 there, we had a car, an EV car that had a lithium battery. I guess they call it a runaway, the cells. And I can envision somebody charging an EV car in one of these developments in bottom floor parking lot and that happening. And maybe we should talk to the fire department about suppression systems or what they would do as far as an EV fire that's a runaway, like we had.
Yeah.
I used 100,000 water on that fire.
Or maybe locate those spaces outside of the garage. That's actually
Yes.
maybe not a good deal. Yeah, just completely outside the garage and eliminate that altogether. That risk.
The lithium batteries, all kinds of things can happen with them.
On the, I know we're running short on time here because we had quite a long meeting, but on the topic of bollards, Dan, I think that if the town, in furtherance of the kind of the envision plan and all that, if they ever create a space that's going to be designated for, block party type events and things like that, I think we need to, Bill, maybe try to see if we can have the ability to have DPW install like kind of temporary bollards there, especially with the threat of terrorism and vehicle-borne attacks. I think some things that I've seen is they already have like kind of the mounts set up, and it allows for regular day-to-day traffic. But when there's an event in place, it's going to cause a like a block party type situation. They can just install those. That's something that I think from a police perspective going forward, just if you hear of some plans to create a space like that, which I think the town's seems like they're trending toward having a dedicated space, that would be something that would definitely help us out.
Yeah,
I think of the Apple store down in South Shore, what happened there.
Sure. Yeah.
You know?
Yep. No, I don't disagree with that. All right. Anybody else have anything?
No.
Anybody have another motion? Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn after the marathon of a meeting.
That's my favorite, Bill. That's my favorite motion you've ever made. At 11:31. Do we have a second by Matt?
Second.
You do, and all are in favor. Guys, thank you. That was a long one. We had a lot on the plate, but
Yeah, have an awesome weekend, folks.
Hey, Joe, this isn't motion worthy, but just in terms of scheduling, I usually block my calendar off for a much longer period of time than the invite goes out for.
Yep.
If we could just sort of vary that based on how heavy the agenda is.
Yep.
Then people can avoid conflicts. That's all.
Yeah.
I usually block it off for 2 to 3 hours.
Well,
anyway.
you're a veteran. That's why. All right.
I saw this one and I had it blocked off to 11, but
Yeah.
this might be a record.
It was 11 p.m. You should have blocked it off. All right, guys. Thanks so much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Have
All
a
right,
good
take
weekend.
care. Bye-bye.
Take care.